What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today I've got for you story from Reddit to put you to sleep. Only if you can. Subscribe if you are new. I found my husband's burner phone. The only contact was a number saved as future wife. So here's the thing, I never thought I'd be the woman digging through her husband's gym bag at 2 a.m., heart hammering, hands shaking, telling myself I was crazy even as I kept searching. But apparently that's exactly what happened. And what I found didn't just break my heart, it rewired my entire understanding of the last 5 years of my life. Every memory, every conversation, every I love you, all of it looked different after I saw that phone. Like someone had taken a painting I'd stared at for years and flipped it upside down, and suddenly I could see all the brushstrokes I'd been trained to ignore. Let me take you all the way back. I need you to understand who I was before this happened because I think it matters. I think it matters a lot. My name is Alina. I'm 31 years old. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin, the kind of town where everyone knows your business before you do, where the grocery store cashier asks about your mom's surgery, where high school football games are the social event of the year. My parents were solid, dependable, boring in the best way. Dad worked at the paper mill for 30 years. Mom taught kindergarten. They fought sometimes, but they always made up. They held hands at church. They kissed each other goodbye every morning. They showed me what marriage looked like when it worked, and I grew up believing that kind of love was not just possible but inevitable. If you were good, if you were kind, if you worked hard and stayed honest, you'd find someone who'd love you forever. That was the deal. I met Marcus at a coffee shop in Milwaukee when I was 24. I'd moved to the city after college for a job in graphic design, and I was still figuring out how to be an adult, how to pay bills on time, how to cook something other than pasta, how to make friends in a city where I knew exactly no one. The coffee shop was my refuge. I'd go there every Saturday morning with my laptop, order an overpriced latte, and pretend I had my life together while I scrolled through job listings and apartment listings and wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake leaving Wisconsin. Marcus was there one Saturday, sitting at the table next to mine, working on what looked like architectural blueprints. He had this way of focusing, completely absorbed, brow furrowed, pen moving across the paper with absolute confidence, that made me want to know what he was thinking. He looked up, caught me staring, and smiled, not a flirtatious smile, a warm, open, hello fellow human smile that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in months. "You're staring at my blueprints," he said, his voice warm and amused. "I'm staring at your concentration," I corrected. "I don't think I've ever seen anyone that focused on anything." "Occupational hazard," he said, closing his notebook. "I'm an architect. If I don't focus, buildings fall down, people get hurt. That's a lot of pressure." "It is," he agreed. "But it's also why I love it. Every line matters, every decision has consequences. There's no hiding from your mistakes in architecture." I liked that. I liked the way he talked about responsibility, about accountability, about the weight of choices. It felt rare. Most guys I'd met in the city were all surface, smooth lines, practiced charm, nothing underneath. Marcus felt like someone with depth, like someone who'd thought about things. We talked for 3 hours that morning. He bought me a second latte. I bought him a muffin. We covered everything, our childhoods, our jobs, our fears, our dreams. He told me about growing up in Chicago, about his parents' messy divorce, about the therapist he'd seen in college who'd helped him understand that his father's infidelity wasn't his fault. I told him about my small-town upbringing, about my parents' steady love, about my terror that I'd never find anything like what they had. "You'll find it," he said, and he looked at me in a way that made my stomach flip. "You're the kind of person who deserves it." We exchanged numbers. We texted constantly. Our first date was dinner at a Thai place that was too loud and too crowded, and we stayed until they kicked us out, talking about everything and nothing. Our second date was a walk along the lakefront in October, the trees on fire with color, the air sharp with the promise of winter. He held my hand for the first time that day, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. We moved in together after a year, got engaged after 2, married after 3 in a small ceremony at my parents' church, surrounded by people who loved us. Marcus cried when he saw me walking down the aisle, actually cried, tears streaming down his face, smiling and crying at the same time. My mom squeezed my hand and whispered, "You found a good one," and I believed her. I believed it with my whole heart. Marcus was a good husband. That's the part that messes with me the most, even now. He was attentive, affectionate, present. He remembered anniversaries and birthdays and the anniversary of our first date. He brought me coffee in bed on weekends. He rubbed my feet after long days at work. He listened when I talked about my day, actually listened, asking questions and remembering details and following up later. When I got promoted at work, he planned a surprise dinner with my friends. When my dad had a heart scare, he drove me to Wisconsin at midnight without me even asking. He was, in every visible way, the perfect partner. And I think that's what made the discovery so devastating. Not just the betrayal itself, but the realization that I'd been living with a performance. That the man I loved, the man I trusted with my whole heart, had been playing a role so convincingly that I'd never questioned the script. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back to the beginning of the end. It started with a phone call. About 6 months ago, Marcus got a call during dinner, a number I didn't recognize, no name attached. He looked at the screen, frowned slightly, and sent it to voicemail. "Wrong number," he said, pocketing the phone. "They've been calling all week. Maybe you should answer," I suggested. "Tell them they have the wrong number." "Nah," he said, picking up his fork. "They'll figure it out." I didn't think much of it. Wrong numbers happen. Telemarketers are relentless. It was nothing. Then it happened again and again. Always during dinner, always a number with no name, always the same slight frown before he sent it to voicemail. After the 4th or 5th time, I asked, "Are you sure it's a wrong number?" "Maybe it's work." "It's not work," he said a little too quickly. "Work calls from the office line. It's just spam. I'll block it." He blocked it. The calls stopped, and I forgot about it, but other things started happening. Small things, easy to dismiss individually, impossible to ignore when you stack them together. Marcus started working late more often. Not every night, but 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes more. He'd text me around 6, running behind, big project, don't wait up, and come home around 10 or 11, smelling faintly of beer, claiming he'd grabbed drinks with coworkers to blow off steam. I'd ask about his day, about the project, about who he'd been with, and he'd give vague answers. Just the team, you wouldn't know them. It was boring, honestly. I believed him, why wouldn't I? He'd never given me a reason not to trust him. He'd always been transparent about his work, his friends, his life. If he said he was working late, he was working late. If he said he was with coworkers, he was with coworkers. Trust was the foundation of our marriage, and I wasn't going to let anxiety crack it. But the late nights kept happening, and Marcus started taking more business trips, short ones, a night here, 2 nights there, always to cities where his firm had projects. Chicago, Minneapolis, Detroit. He'd come back with souvenirs, a mug, a keychain, a t-shirt, and stories about client meetings and site visits. He'd be tired but affectionate, pulling me into bed as soon as he got home, holding me like he'd missed me desperately. I missed him too. I hated the late nights, the trips, the way our schedules seemed to be constantly out of sync. But I told myself it was temporary, that his career was demanding right now, that things would calm down eventually, that every marriage went through phases like this. I focused on my own work, my own friends, my own life. I filled the empty hours with yoga classes and book clubs and weekend brunches. I told myself I was being independent, being supportive, being the kind of wife who didn't need constant attention. And then, about 3 months ago, I found the receipt. It was in Marcus's jacket pocket, the navy blazer he wore to client meetings, the one I was dropping at the dry cleaner because he'd forgotten again. I was checking the pockets for loose change, gum wrappers, the usual debris when my fingers found paper. I pulled it out. A receipt from a hotel in Chicago. The Palmer House, a fancy downtown hotel I'd heard of but never stayed at. The dates were from 2 weeks prior, a Thursday and Friday night, the same Thursday and Friday Marcus had told me he was in Minneapolis for a site visit. I stared at that receipt for a long time. My brain couldn't process it. Minneapolis was not Chicago, a site visit was not a hotel stay, and the name on the receipt, the guest name, wasn't Marcus's, it was a woman's name. Sarah Chen. Sarah Chen. I didn't know anyone named Sarah Chen. Marcus had never mentioned anyone named Sarah Chen, and yet here was a receipt from a Chicago hotel, dated during a trip he'd told me was in Minneapolis, with a woman's name on it. My first instinct was to rationalize. Maybe he'd changed his flight. Maybe the Minneapolis trip got canceled and he went to Chicago instead for a different meeting. Maybe Sarah Chen was a colleague, a client, someone from another firm. Maybe the hotel had made a mistake with the name. Maybe. I put the receipt back in his pocket. I took the jacket to the dry cleaner. I didn't say anything. I told myself I was being paranoid, that there was a reasonable explanation, that Marcus loved me and would never hurt me. I told myself to trust him, to wait for him to mention it, to give him the benefit of the doubt. He never mentioned it, and the late nights continued. The trips continued. The vague answers continued. And I continued to tell myself everything was fine, even as a small, insistent voice in the back of my head grew louder and louder. Then 2 months ago, I found the second receipt. This one was in his car, the glove compartment, where he kept insurance papers and parking tickets. I was looking for the registration because we'd gotten pulled over and the officer wanted to see it. And there, tucked between the registration and an old oil change record, was another hotel receipt. This one from Detroit, the Westin, a Friday and Saturday night 3 weeks prior. Guest name, Sarah Chen, 2 receipts, 2 cities, 2 weekends, same woman's name. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely put the registration back. The officer was talking to me, asking if everything was okay, and I nodded and smiled and handed him the papers and drove home in a daze. I don't remember the drive. I don't remember getting out of the car. I just remember sitting on our couch, the receipt clutched in my hand, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. I confronted Marcus that night. I didn't plan to, I'd intended to wait, to gather more information, to be strategic. But he walked in the door, kissed me hello, asked about my day, and something inside me snapped. "Who is Sarah Chen?" I asked, and my voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Flat, cold, terrified, Marcus froze. Just for a second, a fraction of a second, but I saw it. The micro-expression of someone caught off guard, someone scrambling to construct a response. "Sarah Chen," he repeated, his voice perfectly calm. "I don't know anyone by that name. Why?" I held up the receipt. "I found this in your glove compartment, and another one in your jacket. Palmer House in Chicago, Westin in Detroit, both with Sarah Chen's name on them. Both from weekends you told me you were working." Marcus looked at the receipt, then at me. Then he laughed, a short, disbelieving laugh that was supposed to be reassuring but landed like a slap. "Elena, this is a mistake. Sarah Chen is a colleague from the Chicago office. We were working on a joint project and she booked the rooms because she has the corporate account. I was there for meetings, that's it." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice rising. "Why did you say you were in Minneapolis when you were in Chicago? Why did you say Detroit was a solo trip when you were with someone?" "Because it wasn't relevant," Marcus said, his voice sharp with frustration. "It was work, Elena. Boring, tedious work. I didn't think you'd care about the details." "I care about the lies," I said, and tears were streaming down my face now, hot and angry and scared. "I care that you told me one thing and did another. I care that there's a woman's name on receipts I found hidden in your pockets." "Hidden?" Marcus's voice softened, became pleading. "Elena, I didn't hide anything. I put receipts in my pocket and forgot about them. That's not hiding, that's being absent-minded. And Sarah is a colleague, a married colleague with 2 kids. We're friends, sure, but there's nothing going on, I swear to you, I swear on our marriage." He swore on our marriage. He looked me in the eyes and swore on everything we had, everything we'd built, and I wanted so badly to believe him. I wanted to erase the receipts, the late nights, the wrong number calls, and go back to the version of my life where Marcus was trustworthy and I was secure and everything was fine. So I did, I chose to believe him. I let him hold me, let him wipe my tears, let him promise, over and over, that there was nothing to worry about, that he loved me, that he'd never hurt me. I chose comfort over truth, denial over evidence, because the alternative was too terrifying to face. But the doubt didn't go away. It just went underground, festering in the dark corners of my mind, growing stronger every time Marcus worked late, every time he took a trip, every time his phone buzzed with a text and he turned the screen away so I couldn't see. I started watching him, not consciously, not at first, just noticing things I'd trained myself to ignore. The way he kept his phone face down on the table, the way he took calls in the other room, the way he showered as soon as he got home from work, drinks, as if washing something off. The way he said, "I love you," with the same words but a different rhythm, like he was reciting lines he'd memorized rather than speaking from his heart. I hated myself for noticing. I hated the suspicion, the paranoia, the person I was becoming. I'd never been the jealous wife, the snooping wife, the wife who checked her husband's pockets and glove compartments. I'd always trusted Marcus completely, and now that trust was crumbling, and I didn't know how to stop it or if I even wanted to. Then, a month ago, the wrong number calls started again. Same pattern, always during dinner, always a number with no name, always the same slight frown before Marcus sent it to voicemail. But this time, I noticed something different. This time, after sending the call to voicemail, Marcus would wait exactly 10 minutes, then excuse himself to the bathroom. Every time, like clockwork. The first time I told myself it was coincidence. The second time I started paying attention. The third time I followed him. Not literally, I didn't get up and trail him to the bathroom like a detective in a bad movie, but I listened. I sat at the dinner table, fork in hand, and I listened to the sound of his voice through the bathroom door. Muffled, quiet, but unmistakably a conversation. Not a voicemail, a conversation. He was calling them back. The wrong number, the spam. He was calling them back from the bathroom while I sat 10 feet away eating lasagna. That night, after Marcus fell asleep, after he'd held me, kissed me, told me he loved me more than anything in the world, I got up. I stood in the dark of our bedroom, listening to his breathing, and I made a decision. I was going to find out what was really going on. I was going to know, one way or another, whether my husband was the man I thought he was or someone else entirely. I started with his phone, his regular phone, the one he left charging on the nightstand every night. I'd never looked through it before, not because I didn't have the opportunity, but because I'd never felt the need. Trust, remember. That was our foundation, but trust was gone now and I needed answers. I picked up his phone. I knew his passcode, 427, our anniversary, the date we'd met at that coffee shop. I typed it in. The screen unlocked. And I started looking. His texts were clean. Too clean, maybe work stuff, group chats with friends, messages from me, nothing suspicious. No Sarah Chen, no unknown numbers, no late-night conversations. His call log was similarly innocent. The wrong number calls weren't there at all, which meant he'd deleted them, which meant he had something to hide. I checked his email. Work emails, newsletters, a few personal notes, nothing incriminating. I checked his photos, screenshots of work documents, pictures of us, pictures of food, nothing. I was about to put the phone back, feeling simultaneously relieved and frustrated when I noticed something. A second email app. Not his regular Gmail, a different one I didn't recognize with a generic blue icon. I tapped it. It asked for a password. I tried a few combinations, his birthday, his mom's birthday, our anniversary, and on the third try it opened. The email account was empty, completely empty. No sent messages, no received messages, no drafts. Just a blank inbox with an address I didn't recognize, mdawsonarchitect@protonmail.com, a burner email. An empty burner email on a phone I had access to that he'd been careless enough to leave visible. I stared at it for a long time, my heart hammering, my mind racing. Why would Marcus have a second email account? Why would it be empty? What was he using it for? I put the phone back. I lay down next to him, staring at the ceiling, my brain spinning with possibilities. A burner email could mean anything. It could be for work, for privacy, for avoiding spam. It didn't have to mean an affair, it didn't have to mean betrayal. But combined with the receipts, the late nights, the bathroom calls, the deleted numbers, it meant something. It had to mean something. The next day, I started looking harder. I checked his car more thoroughly, under the seats, in the trunk, in the spare tire compartment. I found nothing. I checked his gym bag, which he took to work with him every day, which he'd told me not to go through because it's just dirty clothes, Alina, you don't want to see that. I went through it anyway. Dirty clothes, yes, a water bottle, a protein bar wrapper, deodorant. And then at the very bottom, tucked into a side pocket I almost missed, a second phone, a burner phone, small, black, nondescript. The kind of phone you buy at a convenience store with cash, no contract, no name attached. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I turned it over in my hands, feeling the weight of it, the significance of it. My husband had a secret phone, a phone I didn't know about, a phone he'd hidden from me. I pressed the power button. The screen lit up, no passcode, just a swipe to unlock, and there on the home screen was a single app. A messaging app I'd never seen before. Signal, I think it was called. Encrypted, private, the kind of app people use when they don't want their conversations traced. I opened it. There was only one conversation, one contact. The name was saved simply, devastatingly, as future wife, future wife. I stared at those two words for what felt like hours. My vision blurred, my ears rang. I felt like I was underwater, like the world had slowed to a crawl and I was watching my own life from a distance, unable to intervene, unable to look away. I opened the conversation. There were hundreds of messages, going back months. Maybe longer, I couldn't tell, my brain wasn't processing details, just impressions. Flirty messages at first, then intimate ones, then explicit ones. Then plans, hotel rooms, dinner reservations. Can't wait to see you, missing you so much, counting down the days until we're together for real. And then, the messages that broke me completely. The ones from 2 weeks ago from Marcus that said, "She suspects something, I need to be more careful, but I'm done pretending. Once the divorce is final, we can be together, just a few more months, I promise." Divorce. He was planning a divorce. He'd been planning it for months, maybe longer, while I sat at home believing our marriage was solid, believing our problems were temporary, believing his late nights were work and his trips were business and his love was real. I kept scrolling, more messages, more plans, talk about apartments, about furniture, about our future home. Talk about children, I can't wait to start a family with you for real this time. Talk about me, Alina doesn't suspect anything. She's too trusting, too naive, it's almost sad. Too trusting, too naive, almost sad. I read that line over and over. I let it sink into my bones, let it replace the love I'd felt with something harder, colder, more permanent. I wasn't just betrayed, I was mocked. I was a joke to him, a convenient placeholder while he built a life with someone else. I put the phone back in his gym bag, I zipped it up. I sat on our bed, the one we'd picked out together, the one where he'd held me and kissed me and told me he loved me, and I waited. Marcus came home at his usual time, around 7. He called out, "Elena, I'm home," in that warm, familiar voice, and I felt something crack inside me. Not break, crack, like the first fracture in a dam before the whole thing collapses. I was sitting at the kitchen table when he walked in. The burner phone was in front of me. I'd taken it out of the bag. I wanted him to see it. I wanted to watch his face when he realized the game was over. He saw it immediately. His smile faltered, his steps slowed. He stood in the doorway of our kitchen, his keys still in his hand, and stared at the phone like it was a bomb. "Elena," he said carefully. "What is that? You tell me," I said, and my voice was eerily calm, steadier than I felt. "You tell me what this is, Marcus. You tell me why you have a second phone. You tell me who future wife is." His face went pale. Actually pale, the color draining from his cheeks like someone had pulled a plug. He didn't deny it. He didn't ask what I was talking about. He just stood there, frozen, while the truth hung in the air between us like smoke. "Elena," he started, and his voice was different now. Not warm, not pleading, not performative, just tired, resigned. "I can explain." "Can you?" I asked. "Can you explain the hotel receipts, the deleted calls, the burner email? The months of planning a divorce you never told me about? Can you explain future wife, Marcus? Can you explain why I'm too trusting, too naive, almost sad?" His eyes widened. He realized I'd read everything. Every message, every plan, every cruel observation about my character that he'd shared with his lover like I was a specimen under glass. "Elena," he said again, and now his voice was breaking. "It's not what you think. I mean, it is, but I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted you to find out like this." "How did you want me to find out?" I asked. "In the divorce papers, when you moved out. When you introduced me to your new wife at some mutual friend's party. I was going to tell you," he said, stepping toward me. I didn't know how. "I didn't want to destroy you." "Too late," I said, and the words came out flat, final. "You already destroyed me, you destroyed us. The moment you decided I was a placeholder, a joke, someone to be managed while you built your real life, that's when you destroyed me. Everything after that was just clean up." He sat down across from me. He put his head in his hands. He started to cry, real tears, not the performative ones from our wedding, but ugly, gasping tears of someone who'd been caught and didn't know what to do. "Her name is Sarah," he said finally. "Sarah Chen, she's an architect at the Chicago firm. We met on a project about a year ago. It started as friendship, then more. I didn't plan it, Elena, I swear. It just happened, I repeated. Like the hotel rooms just happened, like the divorce plans just happened, like future wife just happened. I fell in love with her," he said, and the words were like knives, each one cutting deeper than the last. "I'm in love with her. I didn't want to be. I tried not to be, but I couldn't help it. And I couldn't keep pretending with you. It wasn't fair to either of us." "Fair," I said, and I laughed, a harsh, broken sound that didn't resemble laughter at all. "You want to talk about fair? You want to talk about what's fair, Marcus?" I stood up. I walked to the counter. I picked up a glass, one of our wedding glasses, etched with our initials and the date, and I threw it at the wall. It shattered with a satisfying crash, shards of crystal scattering across the kitchen floor like diamonds. "That's fair," I said, my voice shaking. "That's what fair looks like. You don't get to sit there and tell me about love and fairness when you've been lying to me for a year. When you've been planning a life with someone else while I planned a life with you. When you've been laughing at me behind my back with your future wife." Marcus didn't move. He just sat there, crying, watching me fall apart in a way he'd never seen before, because I'd never let him see it. I'd always been the strong one, the steady one, the wife who held everything together while he chased his dreams. I'd never screamed, never thrown things, never shown him the depth of my rage. And now he was seeing it, all of it, raw and unfiltered and terrifying. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, Elena. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know I can't fix this, but I am sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you?" I asked, and my voice cracked on the last word. "Why did you keep sleeping with me? Why did you keep saying you loved me? Why did you let me believe we were happy when you were counting down the days until you could leave?" "Because I was scared," he said, and his voice was small, childlike. "Because I didn't know how to tell you. Because every time I tried, I saw your face and I couldn't do it. I couldn't break your heart. So you broke it slowly instead," I said. "You let me find out on my own, through receipts and secret phones and messages you were too careless to hide. You let me discover that my entire marriage was a lie, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to believe in. That's not kindness, Marcus. That's cowardice. That's cruelty dressed up as protection." He didn't have an answer for that. He just sat there crying while I stood in the wreckage of our kitchen, crystal shards on the floor, a marriage in ruins, a future that had never existed outside of my imagination. I left that night. I packed a bag, clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the photo album from our wedding that I couldn't bear to look at but also couldn't leave behind. I called my best friend Maya and I said, I need a place to stay. Marcus is cheating on me, it's bad, it's really bad. Maya didn't ask questions, she just said, I'm coming to get you, text me your address, I'm leaving now. She lived 20 minutes away, she was there in 15. She hugged me on the sidewalk while Marcus stood in the doorway watching us, saying nothing. She loaded my bag into her car. She helped me into the passenger seat. She drove me to her apartment, made me tea, sat with me while I cried until I couldn't cry anymore. The next few days were a fog. I called in sick to work. I lay on Maya's couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had happened. Marcus called dozens of times at first, then less frequently. He texted apologies, explanations, pleas for conversation. I didn't respond to any of it. I couldn't. I didn't have words that weren't screams, and I was too exhausted to scream anymore. I hired a lawyer. A sharp, no-nonsense woman named Patricia who specialized in high-conflict divorces. She listened to my story, looked at the evidence I'd gathered, the receipts, the phone screenshots, the messages, and said, you have a strong case. We'll get you everything you're entitled to. I didn't care about money. I didn't care about the house, the car, the savings account. I cared about the years I'd lost, the trust I'd given. The love I'd poured into someone who'd treated it like a renewable resource, something he could use up and move on from without consequence. I filed for divorce 3 weeks after I found the phone. Marcus didn't fight it. He signed the papers, agreed to the terms, gave me the house and most of our savings. He said he wanted to make things right, which was laughable. There was no making this right, no undoing what he'd done, no restoring what he'd destroyed. Sarah Chen, future wife, reached out to me once. An email sent to my work address with a subject line that said, I'm sorry. I didn't open it. I deleted it unread. I didn't want her apologies, her explanations, her version of the story where she was just a woman in love who couldn't help who she fell for. I didn't care about her feelings. I didn't care about her at all. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. Marcus moved to Chicago to be with Sarah, I assume, though I stopped keeping track. I kept the house, which felt less like a victory and more like a burden. Every room held memories that were now tainted, every object a reminder of the performance I'd lived inside for years. I sold the house last month, bought a smaller place, a condo downtown, something with no history, no ghosts, no future wife lurking in the shadows. I'm rebuilding, slowly, painfully, piece by piece. I'm going to therapy, have been since the week I left, and I'm learning that the trust I gave Marcus wasn't foolish or naive. It was brave, it was loving. It was exactly what a marriage should be built on. He was the one who failed, not me. I still have bad days. Days when I wake up and forget, for a split second, that my marriage is over, that the man I loved is someone else's future, that my life has been completely rewritten. Days when I see a couple holding hands and feel a stab of jealousy so sharp it takes my breath away. Days when I wonder if I'll ever trust anyone again, if I'll ever let someone close enough to hurt me. But I'm also having good days. Days when I laugh with friends and it feels real. Days when I finish a project at work and feel proud. Days when I look in the mirror and see someone strong, someone who survived, someone who walked through fire and came out the other side burned but not broken. I posted this whole story on Reddit about 2 months after I found the phone. I needed to tell someone, anyone, what had happened. I needed to know if I was crazy for feeling this destroyed, this betrayed, this fundamentally altered by something that, to an outsider, might look like a common infidelity story. The comments were overwhelming. Thousands of them, most expressing outrage on my behalf, many sharing their own stories of discovery and betrayal. Some people called Marcus a narcissist, a sociopath, a monster. Others said he was just human, flawed, someone who'd made terrible choices out of fear and weakness rather than malice. The comment that stuck with me wasn't the most supportive or the most critical. It was from someone who said, he didn't just cheat, he constructed an entire alternate future while you were building one with him. That's not a mistake, that's architecture. And you deserve someone who builds with you, not around you. That comment gave me language for what I'd experienced. It wasn't just cheating, it wasn't just lying. It was the construction of a parallel life, a hidden blueprint, a secret foundation that made everything we'd built together unstable. Marcus had been an architect in more ways than one. He'd designed a life with me and a life with Sarah simultaneously. And he'd been so careful, so precise, that I'd never noticed the structural flaws until the whole thing collapsed. I don't know if I'll ever fully heal from this. I don't know if I'll ever trust someone the way I trusted Marcus, or if that's even something I should aspire to. Maybe the goal isn't to trust blindly again, but to trust wisely. To give my heart to someone who deserves it, who builds with me rather than around me, who sees a future with me rather than a future in spite of me. I don't know if that person exists. I don't know if I'll find them. But I'm open to the possibility in a way I wasn't before, not because I'm naive, but because I'm brave. Because I know now that I can survive betrayal, can survive heartbreak, can survive the complete destruction of the life I thought I had. And if I can survive that, I can survive anything, including love, including trust, including the terrifying, beautiful possibility of starting over. So tell me, Internet, am I the asshole for throwing the glass? For leaving without giving him a chance to explain? For keeping the house and the savings and not caring about his feelings? For deleting Sarah's email without reading it? For selling the house he helped me buy? I've read the comments. I've heard the arguments. I've sat with this for months and I still don't have a definitive answer. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe some stories don't have clear heroes and villains, just people who hurt each other because they were scared or selfish or human. But I know this: I was not too trusting. I was not too naive. I was not almost sad. I was a woman who loved fully, who trusted completely, who built a life with someone she believed deserved her heart. And when I discovered that belief was based on lies, I walked away. I shattered the glass, I packed my bag, and I started over. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd love the same way. I'd trust the same way. I'd build the same way. I let my mother-in-law plan my baby shower. She invited everyone except me. So here's the thing: I never thought I'd be the one locked out of my own baby shower, standing in the rain in a dress I'd spent 3 weeks picking out, holding a gift bag for my own unborn child, while inside my mother-in-law was hosting a party I wasn't invited to. But apparently that's exactly what happened. And before you ask, no, this isn't some misunderstanding. No, this isn't a "we forgot to put your name on the list" situation. This was deliberate, calculated. And it took me way too long to see it coming. Let me take you all the way back. I want you to understand who I was before this happened, because I think it matters. I think it matters a lot. My name is Claire. I'm 29 years old. I grew up in a middle-class family in Ohio. Mom was a nurse. Dad was a high school history teacher. I had one younger brother who tormented me in the way that younger brothers do, but who'd also fight anyone who actually hurt me. Normal childhood, normal family, normal everything. I was never the kid who got bullied, never the kid who was popular, just normal. Average grades, average friends, average life. I went to a state college, got a degree in communications, moved to Chicago for a job at a marketing firm, and met my husband David at a work conference about 3 years ago. He was everything I didn't know I needed. Smart without being arrogant, funny without trying too hard, kind in a way that felt genuine rather than performative. He was a software engineer at a startup, worked long hours but never made me feel like I was competing with his job for attention. He remembered the little things: my coffee order, the name of my childhood cat, the way I liked my eggs. He texted me good morning every single day without fail, even when we were just dating, even when he was traveling for work in a different time zone. We got married 2 years ago. Small wedding, 30 people, backyard of my parents' house, nothing fancy but everything perfect. David's mom, Linda, was there. She smiled for photos, she gave a toast that was slightly awkward but well-intentioned. She hugged me and said, "Welcome to the family," and I genuinely believed she meant it. Looking back, I was so naive, so desperate to believe that I was entering a family that wanted me, that I missed every red flag waving directly in my face. She was fine at first, polite, a little distant, but fine. She lived in the suburbs about an hour outside the city, and we'd visit every few weeks for dinner. She'd cook these elaborate meals, roasts, casseroles, desserts that took hours, and she'd present them with this expectant look, like she was waiting for us to acknowledge how much effort she'd put in. We'd compliment the food, we'd ask for recipes, we'd offer to help with dishes, and she'd wave us off with a tight smile and say, "No, you relax, I'll handle it." I thought that was just her thing, her love language maybe. Some people show affection through food, through service, through taking care of others. I told myself that's what Linda was doing, that her slightly cold demeanor was just her personality, that she warmed up slowly, that eventually we'd have the kind of relationship I saw my friends having with their mothers-in-law. I was wrong, I was so wrong. The first real warning sign came about 6 months into our marriage. David and I had just bought our first house, a small 2-bedroom in a neighborhood that was slightly too expensive for us, but that we loved anyway. We were excited, proud. We invited Linda over for dinner to show her the place, to let her see what we'd built together. She walked through the house like she was inspecting it for code violations. She touched the walls, she opened cabinets, she ran her finger along the countertops checking for dust. Then she sat down at our dining table, the one we'd bought together at an estate sale, refinished ourselves, fought over the stained color for 3 weeks, and she said, "It's cozy." The word hung in the air like a bad smell. Thanks, David said, oblivious. We love it. It's small, Linda continued. For when you have children, you'll need more space. We're not having children yet, I said, trying to keep my voice light. We're just enjoying being married for now. Linda looked at me then, really looked at me, and there was something in her eyes, something sharp and assessing that made my skin prickle. Of course, she said, take your time. No rush, but the way she said it didn't sound like take your time. It sounded like you're wasting time and I don't approve. I told myself I was being sensitive, that I was reading into things. That Linda was just an older woman with traditional values who wanted grandchildren, and that was normal, and I needed to stop being so defensive. But the comments kept coming, subtle at first, then less so. At Thanksgiving, 6 months later, Claire, you're not eating much. Are you watching your weight? You know it's harder to conceive if you're too thin. At Christmas, David's cousin just had her third baby. She's 32. You're 28, right? The clock is ticking, as they say. At Easter, I was looking at old photos of David as a baby. He was such a beautiful child. I do hope I get to see him with children of his own before I'm too old to enjoy them. Each comment was delivered with a smile, a light tone, the kind of thing you couldn't quite call out without seeming like you were overreacting. And every time, David would squeeze my hand under the table or roll his eyes when she wasn't looking, and I'd swallow my response and tell myself it wasn't worth the fight, but it was building. Brick by brick, comment by comment, Linda was constructing a narrative where I was the obstacle between her and the grandchildren she deserved, where my desire to wait, to build my career, to enjoy my marriage before adding children to the mix, was selfish and wrong. I talked to David about it several times. Your mom keeps making comments about babies, I'd say. It makes me uncomfortable. She's just excited, he'd say. She doesn't mean anything by it. You know how she is. I don't know how she is, I'd respond. That's the problem. I don't know if she's just excited or if she's genuinely upset with me for not being pregnant yet. She's not upset with you, David would say, pulling me into a hug. She loves you, she's just eager. She'll calm down once we actually have kids. Once we actually have kids. The phrase sat in my stomach like a stone. Because what if I didn't want kids? What if I wanted to wait longer? What if I wanted to focus on my career, on my marriage, on myself before becoming a mother? Would Linda ever accept that? Would David? I pushed those thoughts down. I told myself I was overthinking. That Linda's comments were annoying but harmless. That I was strong enough to handle a pushy mother-in-law without letting it destroy my marriage. Then last spring, everything changed. I found out I was pregnant. It wasn't planned. David and I had talked about kids, someday, eventually, when we were ready, but we'd been using protection and I was on birth control and somehow, someway, it happened anyway. I stared at the positive pregnancy test for a solid 10 minutes, my hands shaking, my heart hammering, my brain cycling through every possible emotion at once. Fear, excitement, panic, joy, terror, hope. David was at work when I found out. I sat on our bathroom floor, test in hand, and I cried. I cried because I was happy, and I cried because I was scared, and I cried because I knew, I absolutely knew, that this would change everything. When David came home, I was sitting on the couch with the test on the coffee table, wrapped in a blanket, still crying. He took one look at me, one look at the test, and his face went through approximately 12 emotions in 3 seconds. Then he sat down next to me, pulled me into his arms, and said, "We're going to be okay. We're going to figure this out. I love you so much." We decided to keep the baby. It took a few days of processing, of talking through our fears and our hopes and our finances and our future, but we decided together. We were going to be parents. We were going to figure it out. We were a team. Telling our families was complicated. My parents were thrilled, over the moon. My mom cried on the phone for 20 minutes. My dad immediately started talking about building a crib. My brother made a joke about being an uncle that was actually sweet. They were supportive and excited and respectful of our boundaries, and I loved them so much in that moment that my heart felt like it might burst. Telling Linda was different. We went to her house for dinner the following weekend. David had called ahead to say we had big news, and Linda had prepared an elaborate meal: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, 3 kinds of vegetables, a chocolate cake for dessert. She was practically vibrating with anticipation when we walked in, her eyes immediately dropping to my stomach like she could already see a bump. "So," she said, before we'd even taken off our coats. "What's the big news?" David and I exchanged a look. He squeezed my hand. "We're pregnant," he said. Linda's reaction was not what I expected. She didn't scream with joy. She didn't cry. She didn't rush over to hug me. She just stood there, her hands clasped in front of her, a strange expression on her face. It looked almost like satisfaction, like she'd won something. "I knew it," she said quietly. "I knew you'd come around." "Come around," I repeated, my smile faltering. "Well, you weren't exactly eager before," Linda said, her voice light but her eyes sharp. "I was starting to worry that I'd never have grandchildren. But here we are, better late than never, I suppose." "Better late than never." I felt David's hand tighten on mine, but he didn't say anything. He just laughed, that uncomfortable laugh he used when his mom said something awkward and he didn't know how to respond. "We're really excited," I said, trying to redirect. "The baby is due in December. We're going to find out the gender in a few months." "A December baby," Linda mused, her expression distant. "That gives us plenty of time to plan." "Plan what?" I asked. "The baby shower, of course," Linda said, like it was obvious, like it was already decided. "Every mother needs a baby shower. And since this is my first grandchild, I want to make sure it's done properly." I opened my mouth to respond, to say something like, "Actually, I was thinking of planning it myself, or maybe we can do it together." But Linda was already moving on, already talking about venues and guest lists and themes, her voice rising with excitement that felt more like possession than joy. "I've already been looking at places," she continued. "The garden club has a lovely space, or we could do it at the country club. That's where my friend Barbara had her daughter's shower, and it was absolutely beautiful. And the guest list, well, I have so many friends who are just dying to meet you, Claire. And of course all of David's relatives. It will be a wonderful opportunity for you to get to know everyone." "Linda," I said, my voice careful, "I appreciate the enthusiasm, but I think David and I would like to be involved in the planning. It's our baby after all." Of course," Linda said, waving her hand dismissively. "You'll be involved. I'll run everything by you. I just want to take the stress off your shoulders. You're pregnant, you need to rest. Let me handle the details." I looked at David. He was smiling, looking pleased that his mom was excited, that she was being supportive, that she was offering to help. He didn't see what I saw, the way Linda had already decided how this would go, the way she'd claimed ownership of an event that should have been mine, the way she'd talked about introducing me to her friends like I was a project rather than a person. "Maybe we can talk about it later," David said. "Come on, Mom's made dinner, let's eat." So we ate, and Linda talked, and I sat there picking at my food, feeling a strange sense of foreboding that I couldn't quite name. Like I'd just signed a contract I hadn't read, agreed to terms I didn't understand, and the consequences were going to be far worse than I imagined. After dinner, in the car on the way home, I brought it up with David. "Your mom kind of took over the baby shower thing," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "She's just excited," David said, the same response he always gave. "She wants to help. She wants to control it," I countered. "Did you hear her? She already has venues picked out. She's already talking about her friends meeting me. It's like she's planning a party for herself, not for us." David sighed, running his hand through his hair. "Claire, she's been waiting for this for years. She's dreamed about being a grandmother, about throwing the perfect baby shower. Can't you just let her have this? It's one day, one party." "Does it really matter who plans it?" "It matters to me," I said, and my voice cracked slightly. "It's our baby, our first baby, and I want to be part of the celebration. I don't want to just show up to a party that someone else planned for me." "You'll be part of it," David said. "Mom said she'd run everything by you. You'll have input." "Will I?" I asked. "Or will she just tell me what she's already decided and expect me to be grateful?" David was quiet for a moment. "Then, can we just see how it goes? If she gets too controlling, we'll step in. But for now, can we let her have this? Please, she's my mom, she's important to me." I looked at him, my husband, the man I loved, who was trying to balance his wife and his mother and doing a terrible job of it, and I felt something shift. A small crack in the foundation of us. I pushed it down. I told myself I was being hormonal, being sensitive, being the difficult daughter-in-law who couldn't accept help. "Fine," I said. "We'll see how it goes." That was my first mistake. My second was believing Linda when she said she'd involve me. The next few weeks were a blur of early pregnancy symptoms and work stress and trying to pretend everything was fine. I was exhausted all the time, nauseous in a way that no amount of ginger ale could fix, emotional in a way that made me cry at diaper commercials. David was supportive in the ways he knew how, bringing me crackers, rubbing my back, listening to me vent about my symptoms. But he was also working long hours at the startup, trying to secure funding before the baby came, and I could feel his attention split in ways that left me feeling alone. Linda, meanwhile, was everywhere. She called me every other day with updates on the baby shower. The venue was booked, the garden club, she'd decided, because it had the right ambience. The date was set September 15th, when I'd be about 7 months pregnant, which she said was the perfect time, not too early. Not too late. The theme was chosen, woodland creatures, because she'd seen it on Pinterest and thought it was adorable and gender-neutral. Each update was delivered with the same cheerful, expectant tone, like she was waiting for me to gush with gratitude. And each time I'd try to interject, to offer my own ideas, to suggest changes. "Actually, I was thinking of a book theme," I'd say, "since David and I both love reading." "Oh, that's cute," Linda would respond. "But Woodland Creatures is already booked with the decorator, and it's so classic, don't you think?" "I don't really know many of your friends," I'd say. "I was hoping to invite some of my own friends, my coworkers." Of course, Linda would say. Just send me their names and I'll add them to the list. I'd send her names, 10 names, my college roommate, my work best friend, my cousin, a few others. Linda would respond with "got it," and then never mention them again. When I asked about it, she'd say, "Oh, the list was getting so long I had to make some cuts. But don't worry, the important people will be there." The important people, her people, not mine, I complained to David, repeatedly. "Your mom is ignoring everything I say," I'd tell him. "She's planning this shower like it's her party, not ours. She's just enthusiastic," he'd say. "She wants it to be perfect." "It's not supposed to be perfect for her," I'd snap. "It's supposed to be for us, for me. I'm the one having the baby." I know, David would say, pulling me close. "I'll talk to her. I'll make sure she includes your friends, I promise." He talked to her. I don't know what he said, but I know what happened. Nothing. Linda kept planning, kept updating me on decisions she'd already made, kept treating me like a guest at my own celebration rather than the guest of honor. By August, I was 7 months pregnant, exhausted and deeply resentful. The baby shower was 3 weeks away, and I felt like I knew nothing about it except what Linda chose to tell me. I didn't know the full guest list. I didn't know the menu. I didn't know if my friends were actually invited or if they'd been cut like Linda had suggested. I felt like I was preparing to attend a party that had nothing to do with me, and the closer it got, the more anxious I became. Then 2 weeks before the shower, something happened that should have been my final warning. Something that, looking back, I can't believe I dismissed. Linda called me on a Tuesday afternoon. I was working from home, trying to get through a marketing report while fighting off nausea, and her voice was bright and cheerful when I answered. "Claire, honey, I have the most wonderful idea. I was talking to my friend Barbara, you remember Barbara from the country club, and she suggested that instead of a traditional baby shower, we do a surprise shower. You know, where the guest of honor doesn't know it's happening until they arrive. It would be so fun, so memorable. And it would take the pressure off you, no worrying about being the center of attention, no stress about hosting. You just show up and enjoy." I was quiet for a moment, processing. "Linda, I'm not sure I want a surprise shower. I think I'd rather know what's happening, be prepared." "Oh, but that's the beauty of it," Linda pressed. "You wouldn't have to prepare anything. I'd handle everything. You just get dressed, show up, and be surprised. It would be magical." "Magical for who?" I asked, and I heard the edge in my voice. "Linda, this is my baby shower. I want to be part of it. I don't want to be surprised. I want to know what's happening." There was a pause, then Linda's voice changed just slightly, just enough for me to notice. It became cooler, more formal. "Of course, dear. It was just an idea. We can do it the traditional way. I just thought you'd appreciate not having the stress." "I appreciate the thought," I said, choosing my words carefully, "but I'd really like to be involved. Can you send me the guest list, the final one, and the menu, and maybe we can talk about the decorations? I have some ideas I'd love to share." "Absolutely," Linda said, her voice warm again, too warm. "I'll send everything over this week. And Claire, I really am just trying to make this special for you. I hope you know that." "I do," I lied. "Thank you, Linda." She never sent the guest list. She never sent the menu. She sent me a photo of the cake, a 3-tiered monstrosity with fondant woodland creatures that looked vaguely demonic, and said, "Isn't it precious?" I responded with a thumbs-up emoji because I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. The week before the shower, I had a breakdown. A real, full-blown, sitting on the bathroom floor crying breakdown. David found me there when he came home from work, and he sat down next to me, pulled me into his arms, and said, "What's wrong?" "Is it the baby? Are you in pain?" "It's your mother," I sobbed. "She's taken over everything. I don't even feel like this baby is mine anymore. It's like it's her baby, her shower, her everything, and I'm just the incubator." David was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'll talk to her, I'll fix this." "You've said that before," I cried. "You've said you'd talk to her and nothing changes. She just keeps doing what she wants, and you keep making excuses for her, and I keep getting pushed further and further out of my own life." "I'm sorry," David said, and he sounded genuinely remorseful. "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize it was this bad. I'll handle it, I promise." He called Linda that night. I don't know what he said, but I know what happened the next day. Linda called me, her voice thick with tears, and said, "Claire, I had no idea you felt this way. I was just trying to help. I thought you'd be grateful. I thought you'd want me to take care of things so you could rest." "I appreciate the thought," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "but I need to be involved. This is my baby. My shower, I need to feel like I'm part of it." Of course," Linda said, sniffling. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel left out. I'll do better. I'll send you everything. We'll plan it together." "I promise." She sent me a guest list that afternoon, 47 names. I recognized maybe 15 of them, David's relatives, Linda's friends, a few neighbors. My 10 names were nowhere to be found. "Linda," I called her, my heart pounding. "My friends aren't on this list. The names I sent you, my college roommate, my coworker, my cousin, they're not here." "Oh," Linda said, her voice light. I must have forgotten to add them. The list was just so long already and the venue has a capacity limit. I'll see what I can do. Please add them, I said, my voice firm. They're important to me, I want them there. Of course, dear. I'll take care of it. She didn't take care of it. I found out later, much later, that she never added a single name I gave her. Not one, but at the time I believed her. I wanted to believe her. I was so tired, so pregnant, so desperate for this to work out that I convinced myself everything was fine. That Linda had heard me, that she was trying, that the shower would be okay. I bought a dress. A beautiful, flowing, sage green dress that made my 7-month bump look elegant rather than enormous. I spent 3 weeks looking for it, trying on dozens of options, finally finding the one that made me feel like myself rather than just a pregnant body. I bought shoes that were comfortable but cute. I had my hair done the morning of the shower. I put on makeup for the first time in weeks. I looked in the mirror and thought, I look good. I look like someone who deserves to be celebrated. David drove me to the garden club. It was a Saturday afternoon, sunny and warm, the kind of perfect September day that made everything feel possible. I was nervous but excited, genuinely excited, for the first time in months. I was going to my baby shower. I was going to see my friends, open presents, celebrate this baby that I'd grown to love despite my fears. We pulled up to the garden club at 1:45 p.m. The shower started at 2 p.m. I could see cars in the parking lot, guests arriving, and my heart lifted. People were here, for me, for us. You look beautiful, David said, squeezing my hand. Thank you, I said, smiling. I'm nervous. Don't be, it's going to be great. Mom's really pulled out all the stops. Mom, not your mom, Mom. Like she was his mother and therefore mine, like the distinction didn't matter, like I hadn't spent the last 6 months feeling like an outsider in my own family. I pushed the thought down. I was determined to enjoy this. Determined to make it work. We got out of the car. I smoothed my dress, adjusted my bag, took David's arm. We walked toward the entrance of the garden club, a beautiful stone building with ivy climbing the walls and flower beds bursting with late summer blooms. And then we reached the door. It was locked. I tried the handle. Nothing. I knocked. No response. I looked at David, confused, and he shrugged, pulling out his phone to call Linda. Mom, he said, we're at the door. It's locked. Can you let us in? He was quiet for a moment, listening. Then his face changed. Confusion, then concern, then something I couldn't read. What do you mean she's not on the list? He said. It's her baby shower. Of course she's on the list. Another pause, longer this time. David's face went pale. Mom, that doesn't make sense. Why would you? Okay, just come to the door. We'll figure this out. He hung up, looked at me. She's coming, he said, but his voice was strange, tight. There's some confusion about the guest list. Confusion, I repeated. David, it's my baby shower. How is there confusion about whether I'm invited? I don't know, he said. But she's coming, just wait here. We waited 2 minutes, 5, 10. I stood there in my beautiful dress, in my uncomfortable shoes, my hand on my belly, feeling the baby kick as if sensing my distress. Cars kept pulling into the parking lot. People I didn't recognize walked past us, smiled politely, and entered through a side door that I hadn't seen, a door that was apparently unlocked, a door that led to my baby shower without me. Finally, Linda appeared. She opened the front door from the inside, her face composed, her smile fixed in place. She was wearing a cream-colored dress that looked suspiciously like something a host would wear, not a guest. She had a clipboard in her hand. Claire, David, she said, her voice warm but her eyes cold. I'm so sorry for the confusion. There seems to be an issue with the guest list. What issue? I asked, my voice shaking. Linda, it's my baby shower. I'm the guest of honor. How am I not on the list? Well, Linda said, consulting her clipboard, the guest list was finalized 2 weeks ago, and unfortunately, your name wasn't on it. I tried to add you at the last minute, but the venue is very strict about capacity limits. I'm afraid there's simply no room. No room. I stared at her. I stared at this woman who had spent months planning my baby shower, who had taken over every detail, who had ignored every request I'd made, and I realized, I finally, belatedly, horrifically realized that this was never an accident. You didn't invite me, I said, and my voice was barely a whisper. You planned my baby shower and you didn't put me on the guest list. Claire, that's not, don't lie to me, I said, and my voice was louder now, sharp, cutting through her practiced calm. You deliberately left me off the list. You invited everyone except me. This isn't a mistake. This is what you wanted. Linda's smile didn't falter. If anything, it grew wider, more satisfied. Claire, you're being dramatic. It was an oversight, a simple mistake. I'm sure we can figure something out. Figure something out, I repeated. I'm standing outside my own baby shower in the rain. It had started drizzling. I hadn't even noticed. In a dress I spent 3 weeks picking out, holding a gift bag for my own unborn child, and you're telling me it was an oversight. David stepped between us. Mom, what the hell is going on? Why isn't Claire on the list? I told you it was a mistake, Linda said, but her voice was different now, defensive, annoyed, like we were inconveniencing her. The venue has a capacity of 50. The guest list was already at capacity. I couldn't add her without removing someone else. So remove someone else, David exploded. She's my wife, she's having my baby. This is her shower, and these are my friends, Linda snapped, her facade cracking. My family, people who have known me for years, who have supported me, who are here to celebrate my grandchild. I wasn't going to uninvite them because Claire decided at the last minute that she wanted to attend. Decided at the last minute. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my knees buckle, felt David catch me, felt the world tilt on its axis. You think I decided at the last minute, I whispered. Linda, this is my baby, my shower, you took it from me. You took everything from me. I didn't take anything, Linda said, her voice cold and final. You didn't want it. You complained about every decision I made. You criticized my planning, my choices, my intentions. You made it clear that you didn't appreciate my help, so I decided to do it without you, for people who would actually be grateful. So you threw me my own baby shower and didn't invite me, I said. You invited everyone except the mother of the baby. You made it clear you didn't want to be involved, Linda repeated. I was just respecting your wishes. I looked at David. He was staring at his mother like he'd never seen her before. Like the woman who'd raised him, who'd baked him cookies and bandaged his knees and told him she loved him, had been replaced by a stranger. A cruel, calculating stranger who just admitted to deliberately excluding his wife from the most important celebration of her pregnancy. Mom, he said, his voice barely audible. What have you done? I've done what you wouldn't, Linda said, and her voice was triumphant now, unguarded, revealing the truth she'd been hiding for months. I've protected this family from her. From her selfishness, her ingratitude, her refusal to appreciate anything I do. She didn't deserve this shower. She didn't deserve any of it. And now everyone inside knows exactly what kind of person she is. What kind of person I am, I repeated, my voice hollow. What did you tell them? The truth, Linda said simply. That you're unstable, that you're controlling, that you've been trying to isolate David from his family since the day you met, that you're not fit to be a mother. That we all need to support David through this difficult time. The world went silent, completely, utterly silent. I could hear my own heartbeat, the baby's kicks, the rain falling on the stone path, and then I could hear something else, laughter. From inside the garden club, the sound of people celebrating, eating cake, opening presents, while I stood outside in the rain, listening to my mother-in-law destroy my reputation to everyone I was supposed to trust. You're lying, David said, but his voice was weak, uncertain. Mom, you can't tell people those things, they're not true. Are they not? Linda asked, turning to him with an expression of wounded innocence. David, she's been trying to turn you against me since the wedding. She doesn't want me in your lives. She wants to cut me out to keep my grandchild from me. I've seen it. Everyone's seen it. I'm just trying to protect you. Protect me, David repeated. From my wife, from the mother of my child, from her influence, Linda said. She's poison, David. She's always been poison. And I won't let her destroy this family. I don't remember making the decision to leave. I just remember turning around, walking away from the garden club, from Linda, from the laughter inside. I remember David calling my name, remember hearing him argue with his mother, remember the sound of the door closing as he went inside to confront her. I walked to my car. I sat in the driver's seat, my dress soaked, my makeup running, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't get the key in the ignition. I sat there and I cried. I cried harder than I'd ever cried in my life, harder than when my grandmother died, harder than when I got my heart broken in college. I cried for the baby shower I'd never have, for the celebration that had been stolen from me, for the family I'd tried to join that had rejected me completely. And then I got angry, not the hot, explosive anger I'd felt in the moment. A cold, steady, crystalline anger that settled in my chest like a stone. I was done. Done being nice, done being understanding, done making excuses for Linda's behavior and David's inaction. I was done being the accommodating daughter-in-law, the patient wife, the good girl who swallowed her feelings to keep the peace. I started the car. I drove home. I packed a bag, clothes, toiletries, my prenatal vitamins, the ultrasound photos I'd kept on the fridge. I called my mom. I didn't cry. I just said, I need to come home. Linda threw me my baby shower and didn't invite me. I can't stay here anymore. My mom didn't ask questions. She just said, I'm coming to get you. Text me your address. I'm leaving now. She lived 4 hours away. I told her not to come, that I'd drive myself, that I was fine. She came anyway. She was there in 3.5 hours, pulling into our driveway, getting out of her car, pulling me into her arms and holding me while I finally broke down completely. David came home 2 hours later. He found me on the couch, my bag packed, my mom in the kitchen making tea like she always did when things were bad. He looked terrible, pale, disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed like he'd been crying. Claire, he said, his voice broken, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know she was capable of this. You knew, I said, and my voice was flat empty. You knew she was controlling. You knew she was obsessed with this baby. You knew she was making me miserable. And every time I tried to tell you, you made excuses. She's just excited. She doesn't mean anything by it. She's my mom. She's important to me. You chose her comfort over my safety over and over again until she felt safe enough to do this. I didn't choose her, David said, kneeling in front of me. I love you, I choose you. I told her that inside. I told her she was wrong, that she'd crossed a line, that she needed to apologize. And what did she say? David was quiet. Then she said I was brainwashed. That you turned me against her, that she'd done nothing wrong. Of course she did, I said. Because in Linda's world, Linda is never wrong. And you know what, David? In your world, Linda is never wrong either, because you never hold her accountable. You never set boundaries, you never protect me from her. I'll do better, David said, tears streaming down his face. I promise, I'll cut her off, I'll never speak to her again. Just please, please don't leave me. I looked at him, my husband, the father of my child, the man I'd loved enough to marry, and I felt something I never thought I'd feel. Pity. Not love, not anger, not even hurt, just pity. Because he was finally seeing what I'd seen for months, and he was terrified, and it was too late. I need space, I said. I'm going to my parents' house. I'm going to have this baby there with people who actually support me. And you need to figure out if you're my husband or Linda's son, because you can't be both. Not anymore. I left that night. My mom drove, and I sat in the passenger seat, my hand on my belly, feeling the baby move as we put miles between me and the life I'd tried to build. I didn't look back, I couldn't. The next few weeks were a blur of legal consultations, therapy appointments, and painful conversations. I filed for separation. I changed my phone number. I blocked Linda on every platform. I focused on my pregnancy, on my health, on preparing for the baby without the chaos of David's family weighing me down. David tried. I'll give him that. He went to therapy. He cut off contact with Linda, at least he said he did. He drove to my parents' house every weekend, bringing flowers, bringing apologies, bringing promises that things would be different. He cried. He begged. He said everything I needed to hear, but I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. I couldn't unhear Linda's words, unfeel the rain on my face, unlive the moment when I realized that the woman who was supposed to welcome me into her family had instead orchestrated my public humiliation. And I couldn't forget that David had let it happen, that he'd watched his mother take over my baby shower, ignore my boundaries, manipulate and control every aspect of the celebration, and he'd done nothing until it was too late. Our daughter was born in December. I named her Hope because that's what I needed. Hope that things could be better. Hope that I could build a life without the toxicity that had nearly destroyed me. Hope that my daughter would grow up knowing she was loved, wanted, celebrated, not as a pawn in someone else's game, but as her own person, worthy of respect and autonomy. David was there for the birth. I let him be because despite everything, he was her father, and I still believe, that children deserve both parents if both parents can be safe and healthy. He held Hope for the first time and cried, and I watched him cry, and I felt a flicker of something that might have been love, or might have been nostalgia, or might have been nothing at all. We're divorced now, have been for about 6 months. We co-parent Hope, and David sees her every other weekend. He's a good father, I'll give him that. He's present, he's loving, he's involved. But he's also still entangled with Linda, not as much as before, but enough that I don't trust him completely. Enough that I watch him carefully, waiting for the moment when his mother's influence creeps back in, when his boundaries crumble, when he chooses comfort over courage. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm prepared if it does. Linda has never met Hope. She sends letters to my parents' address since she doesn't know where I live now, full of apologies and explanations and pleas for forgiveness. She says she's changed. She says she's in therapy. She says she never meant to hurt me, that it was all a misunderstanding, that she was just trying to help. I don't believe her. I don't think people like Linda change. I think they adapt, they learn new tactics, they find new ways to control and manipulate. And I think the only way to protect myself and my daughter is to keep her as far away from us as possible. I posted this whole story on AITA about 3 months after the baby shower incident. I needed perspective. I needed to know if I was overreacting, if I was the difficult daughter-in-law who couldn't accept help, if I was the one who destroyed my own marriage by being too sensitive, too demanding, too unwilling to compromise. The comments were overwhelming. Thousands of them, most expressing outrage on my behalf, many sharing their own stories of toxic mothers-in-law, some offering practical advice about legal protections and custody arrangements. A few people said I should have tried harder to work things out with David, that marriage is about forgiveness, that Linda might have genuinely been trying to help and just went about it wrong. But the comment that stuck with me, the one I read over and over when I was doubting myself, came from someone who said, "She didn't just plan a party without you. She deliberately excluded you from your own celebration. invited everyone you know to witness it, and spent months poisoning them against you so they'd believe you deserved it. That's not a misunderstanding. That's not excited grandma behavior. That's calculated emotional abuse, and you were right to leave. That comment gave me permission to stop doubting myself, to stop wondering if I was the villain in this story, to accept that what happened to me was wrong, that Linda's actions were intentional and cruel, and that protecting myself and my daughter was not selfish, it was necessary. So here I am 2 years later. I'm living in a new city, in a small apartment that Hope and I have made our own. I have a new job, remote, flexible enough to support us. I have friends who have become my chosen family, who threw me a real baby shower when Hope was 6 months old, a small celebration with people who actually love me. I have my parents who have been my rock through all of this. I have my brother who drives 3 hours every month just to spend a weekend with his niece. I don't have David, not the way I used to, but I have peace, I have safety. I have the knowledge that I stood up for myself when it mattered most, that I walked away from a situation that was destroying me, that I chose my daughter's well-being over the appearance of a happy family. And I have hope. My beautiful, brilliant, stubborn daughter who just turned 2 and who has my eyes and David's smile and a laugh that fills every room she's in. She's the reason I got through this. She's the reason I'll keep getting through whatever comes next. Linda still sends letters. I don't read them anymore. I have my mom screen them and toss them if they're more of the same. But I know she's still out there, still trying, still convinced that she's the victim in this story, that her son was stolen from her by a cruel daughter-in-law who wouldn't appreciate her generosity. She can think whatever she wants. She can tell her friends, her family, anyone who will listen that I'm the bad guy. She can host baby showers for grandchildren she'll never meet, surround herself with people who believe her version of the story, live in the fantasy she's constructed where she's the loving grandmother and I'm the villain who tore her family apart. I don't care anymore, I really don't, because I know the truth, I know what happened. I know who I am, who I've always been, and who I became when I finally stopped letting other people define me. I am not the difficult daughter-in-law. I am not the ungrateful wife. I am not the woman who destroyed her marriage because she couldn't get along with her husband's mother. I am Claire. I am Hope's mother. I am a survivor of calculated cruelty who walked away from her own baby shower in the rain and never looked back. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd walk away sooner. I'd trust my instincts earlier. I'd stop making excuses for Linda's behavior the moment she started making me feel small, instead of waiting until she locked me out of my own life. But I can't change the past. I can only learn from it. And what I've learned is this: family is not about blood. It's not about obligation. It's not about tolerating cruelty because she's your mother-in-law or she's just excited or she doesn't mean anything by it. Family is about love. Real love, not performance, not control, not manipulation disguised as generosity. And if someone in your life, mother, father, in-law, anyone, can't love you without hurting you, then they don't get to be in your life, period. I walked out of that restaurant, that garden club, that locked door, that party I wasn't invited to, and I took my life back. Piece by piece, day by day, I rebuilt something better, something real. Something that belongs to me and my daughter and no one else. So tell me, Internet, am I the asshole for leaving my husband, for keeping my daughter from her grandmother, for choosing myself over the appearance of a happy family? I've read the comments, I've heard the arguments. I've sat with this for 2 years and I still don't have a definitive answer. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe some stories don't have clear heroes and villains, just people who hurt each other because they were scared or selfish or human. But I know this: I am not sorry for protecting myself. I am not sorry for protecting my daughter. And I am not sorry for walking away from a baby shower that was never mine, into a rain that washed everything clean, and finding my way home. Your move, Internet, I'm listening. My boss fired me for not being a team player. I was in the hospital with my dying dog. So here's the thing: I never thought I'd be the person crying in a hospital parking lot at 3 a.m., holding a termination email on my phone, while inside the building my dog was fighting for his life. But apparently that's exactly what happened. And before you ask, no, this isn't some exaggerated story about a mean boss and a sad puppy. This is about what happens when a company decides that your loyalty is a one-way street, that your grief is an inconvenience, and that being a team player means abandoning everything that makes you human the moment it conflicts with their bottom line. Let me take you all the way back. I want you to understand who I was before this happened because I think it matters. I think it matters a lot. My name is Jordan. I'm 28 years old. I grew up in a house that was never quiet: 3 siblings, 2 dogs, a cat who thought she owned the place, and parents who believed that a home without animals was just a building. We had rescue dogs, foster dogs, the occasional stray cat that wandered in and never left. My mom volunteered at the shelter every Saturday. My dad built a dog run in the backyard that was nicer than some people's houses. Animals weren't pets to us, they were family. They were the heartbeat of our home. I moved out at 22, fresh out of college with a degree in marketing and a job offer at a mid-sized tech firm in Austin. I was excited, first apartment, first real job, first taste of independence. But the apartment felt empty, too quiet, too clean. I lasted 6 months before I drove to the shelter and came home with a scruffy, one-eyed terrier mix named Biscuit. He'd been there for 8 months, overlooked because he wasn't cute in the conventional sense. His fur was patchy. His left eye was missing from an old injury, and he had this habit of tilting his head so far to the side that he looked permanently confused. But when I knelt down at his kennel, he pressed his whole body against the bars and wagged his tail so hard his hips shook. And I just knew, Biscuit was my person. My roommate, my shadow, my alarm clock, my therapist, my best friend. He slept on my pillow, ate half my meals, and followed me from room to room like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let me out of his sight. When I was stressed about work, he'd climb into my lap and press his face against my neck until my breathing slowed. When I was happy, he'd spin in circles and make this ridiculous snorting sound that never failed to make me laugh. He was, in every way that mattered, the reason I got through my 20s in one piece. I got the job at Meridian Solutions about 3 years ago. It was a step up, better pay, better title, better opportunities. The interview process was grueling, 5 rounds, including a culture fit interview where they asked me about my hobbies, my values, my commitment to the team. I told them about Biscuit, about how he taught me patience and responsibility and unconditional love. The interviewer, a woman named Karen who would later become my direct manager, smiled and said, "We love pet people here. They tend to be more empathetic, more loyal." I should have known that was a warning. That loyal wasn't a compliment, it was a job requirement. The first year at Meridian was actually good. The work was challenging but interesting, the team was smart and collaborative, and Karen was supportive in a way that felt genuine. She remembered Biscuit's name, asked about him in meetings, even sent me a dog toy as a welcome gift when I joined. The company had a bring your dog to work policy, and I brought Biscuit in every Friday. He'd sleep under my desk while I answered emails, and Karen would stop by to pet him, calling him our office mascot. I worked hard. I stayed late when projects demanded it, came in early when deadlines loomed, volunteered for the tasks no one else wanted. I told myself I was building something, a career, a reputation, a future. I told myself the sacrifices were temporary, that the long hours and missed weekends would pay off eventually. I told myself I was a team player, and I was. I covered for coworkers who called in sick. I trained new hires on my own time. I led the company charity drive, organized the holiday party, mentored interns who went on to get full-time offers. I said yes to everything because that's what team players do, right? You show up, you sacrifice. You put the team's needs above your own, and eventually the team puts your needs above theirs. That's the deal, that's what they tell you. But here's the thing about teams, they're made of people, and people are replaceable. And companies are not people. They are systems designed to extract maximum value from human beings while giving back the minimum required to keep those human beings functional. I knew this intellectually. Everyone who works in corporate America knows this intellectually. But knowing something and feeling it are different things. And I didn't feel it until Biscuit got sick. It started small. A cough that wouldn't go away. A slight lethargy, Biscuit sleeping more than usual, not spinning in circles when I came home, not begging for scraps at dinner. I told myself it was age, he was 11, getting up there for a dog his size. I told myself he'd perk up when the weather changed, when I switched his food, when we went to the park more often. Then one morning, I found blood in his water bowl. I took him to the vet immediately. They ran tests, blood work, x-rays, ultrasounds. The vet, a kind woman named Dr. Alvarez, sat me down in an exam room with Biscuit sleeping in my lap, and she told me the words that would reshape my entire life. "Jordan, Biscuit has advanced lymphoma, it's aggressive. Without treatment, he has maybe a few weeks. With treatment, chemotherapy, steroids, supportive care, we might get a few months, maybe 6, but I need to be honest with you. The cancer is extensive, treatment will be hard on him, and it's not curable." I sat there, stroking Biscuit's patchy fur, feeling his heartbeat against my palm, and I cried. Not quiet, controlled crying, ugly, gasping, can't breathe crying. Dr. Alvarez handed me tissues and waited. She didn't rush me. She didn't offer false hope. She just sat with me in the reality of what I'd just learned. "What do?" I finally asked. "That's up to you," she said gently. "Some people choose treatment to buy time. Some people choose quality of life over quantity. There's no right answer. Only what feels right for you and Biscuit." I chose treatment. Of course I did. I wasn't ready to let him go. I couldn't imagine a world without him, my apartment silent, my bed empty, my life missing the one constant that had got me through every hard moment of the last 6 years. I would do anything for more time, anything. The treatment was brutal. Weekly chemotherapy sessions, daily medications, constant monitoring. Biscuit lost his appetite, lost weight, lost the little energy he'd had left. But he was still Biscuit, still pressing against me when I held him, still wagging his tail when I came home, still making that ridiculous snorting sound when I scratched behind his ears. He was fighting, so I fought with him. I told Karen about it the day after the diagnosis. I went into her office, closed the door, and explained the situation, the cancer, the treatment, the prognosis, the time I'd need. I expected sympathy. I expected understanding. I expected, at minimum, the flexibility to work from home on treatment days, to leave early when Biscuit had appointments, to take the occasional day off when the exhaustion of caregiving made me useless at my desk. Karen listened. She nodded, she made notes on a pad in front of her. And then she said, "Jordan, I understand this is difficult, but I need you to understand that we're entering our busiest quarter. The Henderson account is launching in 6 weeks and you're light on the creative strategy. I need you present, I need you focused, I need you here." "I'll be here," I said. "I just need some flexibility. I can work from home on treatment days. I can come in early, stay late, make up the hours. I'll get the work done, I promise. I just need to be there for him." Karen was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm going to be honest with you. We've had concerns about your commitment lately. You've been leaving early, calling in sick, seeming distracted in meetings. The team has noticed. The leadership has noticed. If you want to advance here, if you want to be considered for the senior strategist role we've been discussing, I need to see that you're all in. That you're a team player." "A team player," I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Karen, my dog is dying. I'm not asking for a vacation. I'm asking for flexibility while I try to keep him alive. And I'm telling you that this company values dedication," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "We value people who show up even when things are hard, who put the team's success above their personal circumstances. I'm not saying you can't take care of your dog. I'm saying you need to find a way to do both without letting your work suffer." I left her office feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. I went to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and cried until my eyes were swollen and my throat was raw. Then I washed my face, went back to my desk, and worked until 9 p.m., because that's what team players do. The next 2 months were the hardest of my life. I woke up at 5 a.m. to give Biscuit his medications. I went to work, put in 10-hour days, came home to take him to chemo or emergency vet visits, or just to hold him while he shook from the side effects. I worked from home on treatment days, answering emails from the vet's waiting room, taking calls while Biscuit slept on the floor beside me. I didn't sleep more than 4 hours a night. I lost 15 pounds. I cried in my car, in bathroom stalls, in the vet's parking lot at midnight when Biscuit had a fever and I didn't know if he'd make it through the night. And through it all, I kept working. I hit every deadline. I led every meeting. I presented the Henderson strategy to the client and they loved it. "Best work we've seen from Meridian," the client said, and Karen smiled and took credit and never mentioned my name. I didn't care. I was too tired to care. I just needed to keep moving, keep performing, keep proving that I was a team player so that when this was over, when Biscuit was better, when the quarter ended, when I could breathe again, I'd still have a job. Still have a future, but Biscuit wasn't getting better. The chemo wasn't working the way we'd hoped. The cancer was spreading despite everything. Dr. Alvarez called me into her office one Tuesday afternoon. I'd taken a half day, the first time I'd left work early in weeks, and she told me gently but firmly that we were running out of options. "The cancer has moved to his lungs," she said. "He's having trouble breathing. We can keep him comfortable for a little while, but Jordan, I think it's time to talk about quality of life. About letting him go with dignity." I shook my head. I couldn't accept it. I couldn't imagine making that choice, signing the paper, holding him while the light left his eyes, walking out of the clinic with an empty leash. I couldn't do it. "I wouldn't do it. One more round," I begged. "Please, just one more. Maybe it'll work this time." Dr. Alvarez looked at me with such compassion that it almost broke me. "We can try," she said. "But I need you to prepare yourself. He's suffering, Jordan, and at some point keeping him alive becomes about your needs, not his." I understood what she was saying. I hated her for saying it. I loved her for saying it. I scheduled the next round of chemo for Thursday and went back to work. Wednesday night, Biscuit crashed. I came home from work to find him lying in his bed, struggling to breathe, his gums pale, his body limp. I scooped him up. He was so light, so fragile, so different from the sturdy dog I'd brought home 6 years ago. And I drove to the emergency vet, running red lights, sobbing, praying to a God I didn't believe in to please, please, please let him be okay. They admitted him immediately. Oxygen, IV fluids, emergency stabilization. The vet on duty, a young man whose name I never caught, told me it was touch and go, that Biscuit's body was shutting down. That even if they stabilized him, the end was near. I called Karen from the waiting room. It was 11 p.m. I didn't care about the time. I didn't care about anything except keeping my job while I tried to keep my dog alive. Karen, it's Jordan, I'm at the emergency vet. Biscuit is critical, I won't be in tomorrow, maybe Friday too, I don't know. There was a pause, then, Jordan, the Henderson launch review is tomorrow. You're presenting? I know, I said, my voice breaking. I know, I'm sorry, I can't leave him, he might not make it through the night. Another pause, longer this time. I understand this is hard, but the team is counting on you. The client is counting on you. If you're not there tomorrow, I need to know that you're committed to this company, to this team, because right now it feels like you're choosing your dog over your career. I stared at the phone. I stared at the fluorescent lights of the waiting room, at the other pet owners dozing in chairs, at the clock on the wall that said 11:17 p.m. And I felt something crack inside me, not break, crack. Like the first fracture in a dam before the whole thing collapses. I'm choosing not to let my dog die alone, I said quietly. If that's a problem for you, then I don't know what to tell you. Jordan, Karen said, and her voice was different now. Cold, final, I need you to think very carefully about your next move, because this conversation is being noted in your file, and if you're not in that meeting tomorrow, there will be consequences. Noted in my file, I repeated. For being at the emergency vet with my dying dog, that's what's being noted. For failing to meet your obligations to the team, Karen corrected. For prioritizing personal matters over professional responsibilities. For not being a team player. I hung up. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't apologize. I just hung up and sat there, phone in my hand, feeling the anger and grief and exhaustion swirl together into something dangerous and sharp. Biscuit made it through the night. Barely. They stabilized him, got him breathing on his own, told me he was critical but stable and that I should go home and rest. I didn't go home. I slept in the waiting room chair, my jacket balled up as a pillow, my phone buzzing with emails I didn't read. At 6 a.m., Karen texted me, meeting starts at 9, your presence is expected. I didn't respond. I went to Biscuit's kennel in the ICU, he was sedated, hooked up to machines, but alive, still alive, and I sat with him. I held his paw, I told him I loved him, I told him I was sorry. I told him I'd be there when he woke up, that he wasn't alone, that I'd never leave him alone. At 8:30 my phone rang, I ignored it. At 8:45 it rang again, ignored. At 9:15 an email came through. Subject line, performance concern, immediate action required. I didn't open it, I couldn't. I was holding Biscuit's paw, watching his chest rise and fall, counting every breath like it might be his last. At 11 a.m. another email, this one from HR. Please report to the office at your earliest convenience to discuss your recent attendance and performance issues. I laughed. Actually laughed, a harsh, broken sound that made a nurse look over with concern. Attendance and performance issues. While I sat in an ICU holding my dying dog's paw, that was my crime, that was my failing. Biscuit died at 2:47 a.m. on Friday morning. I was there. I held him. I felt his last breath, his last heartbeat, the moment when the warmth left his body and he was just gone. I stayed with him for an hour after, stroking his fur, telling him all the things I'd never said, how he'd saved me, how he'd been my family when I was alone, how I didn't know how to live in a world without him. Dr. Alvarez found me there. She didn't rush me. She sat on the floor of the ICU kennel in her scrubs and she held my hand while I cried. You gave him a good life, she said. You gave him love. That's all any of us can do. I drove home at 4 a.m. The apartment was silent, empty. Wrong. I walked to Biscuit's bed, the one by the window where he used to sun himself, and I sat down and I screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw, until my neighbors banged on the wall, until there was nothing left inside me but silence. I slept for 14 hours. When I woke up, there were 17 missed calls, 23 emails, and a text from Karen that said, "We need to talk, urgently." I didn't call her back. I couldn't. I was hollowed out, emptied, a shell of a person wandering through an apartment that felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. I spent the weekend in a fog, packing up Biscuit's things, making arrangements with the crematorium, sitting on the floor where his bed used to be and staring at nothing. Monday morning, I went into the office. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Obligation, the desperate hope that if I just showed up, just performed normalcy, I could outrun the grief that was eating me alive. Karen called me into her office at 9 a.m. She didn't ask about Biscuit. She didn't offer condolences. She slid a folder across her desk and said, "Jordan, we've made the difficult decision to terminate your employment, effective immediately." I stared at the folder, at the words termination letter on the front. I didn't open it, I just looked at her, this woman who'd petted my dog, who'd called him the office mascot, who told me pet people were more empathetic, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even surprise. Just emptiness. For what? I asked, my voice flat. For failing to meet the expectations of your role, Karen said, her voice professional, rehearsed. For repeated absences without adequate notice. For missing critical client meetings. For demonstrating a pattern of behavior that suggests you're not committed to the team's success. For not being a team player. Not being a team player, I repeated. Because I was in the hospital with my dying dog. Because you prioritized personal circumstances over professional responsibilities, Karen corrected, repeatedly. Despite multiple warnings and conversations about the importance of your role, the Henderson launch suffered because of your absence. The client is unhappy. The team had to pick up your slack. That's not the Meridian way. The Meridian way, I said, and I laughed, that same harsh, broken laugh from the vet's waiting room. You mean the way where you extract everything from people and give nothing back? Where loyalty is demanded but never reciprocated? Where team player means sacrificing your humanity on the altar of someone else's profit? Jordan, Karen said, her voice tight with warning, I understand you're upset. But I need you to remain professional. This is a business decision, nothing personal. Nothing personal, I repeated. You fired me 3 days after my dog died, while I was grieving, while I was destroyed. And you want me to believe that's not personal? It's policy, Karen said. We have standards, expectations. If you can't meet them, we can't keep you on. I stood up. I looked at the termination letter, at Karen's carefully neutral face, at the office around me, the desk where I'd spent countless late nights, the conference room where I'd presented ideas that won accounts, the break room where I'd organized birthday celebrations for coworkers I barely knew. I looked at all of it and I realized I'd never belonged here. I'd been performing loyalty for a system that saw me as disposable, and the performance had cost me everything. I hope you remember this, I said quietly. Not because I want revenge, because I want you to understand what you did. I was a good employee. I was a good person. I gave you everything I had and you took it, and you took my dog's last days from me, and you have the audacity to call it policy. That's not policy, Karen, that's cruelty. And one day you'll be on the other side of it, and maybe then you'll understand. I walked out. I didn't take the termination letter. I didn't pack my desk. I left everything, the photos of Biscuit, the coffee mug Karen had given me, the award I'd won for the Henderson pitch. I just walked out, through the office, past my former coworkers who wouldn't meet my eyes, into the parking lot, into the sunlight that felt too bright, too harsh, too alive. I sat in my car for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, feeling the weight of everything, the grief, the rage, the exhaustion, the betrayal, pressing down on me like a physical force. And then I started the car and drove to the park where I used to walk Biscuit, where he'd chase squirrels and sniff every tree and make friends with every dog he met. I sat on our bench, the one by the pond where he'd watch ducks for hours, and I opened my phone. I wrote the whole story out, every detail, every conversation, every moment of cruelty disguised as professionalism. I posted it on Reddit because I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, that what happened to me was wrong, that a company that demands your soul and discards you when you need compassion isn't a team, it's a machine, and machines don't care about dogs or grief or human beings. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of comments, most expressing outrage on my behalf. People shared their own stories of bosses who denied bereavement leave for miscarriages, of companies who'd fired employees for caring for sick parents, of team player cultures that demanded everything and gave nothing. Some people called Karen a monster, a sociopath, the embodiment of corporate evil. Others said she was just doing her job, that business is business, that I should have managed my time better, planned for emergencies, not let my personal life interfere with my work. The comment that stuck with me wasn't the angriest or the most sympathetic. It was from someone who said, "They tell you we're a family when they want your loyalty, and it's just business when they want your sacrifice. You can't be both. You were never family to them, you were labor, and labor is replaceable." That comment gave me language for what I'd experienced. The team player rhetoric, the culture fit interviews, the pet-friendly office policies, they weren't genuine expressions of care. They were recruitment tools, ways to make employees feel indebted, obligated, willing to sacrifice without question. And when the sacrifice became too much, when I needed something back, when I needed compassion and flexibility and humanity, the illusion shattered. I wasn't a team player, I was a liability, and liabilities get cut. I didn't sue Meridian. I thought about it, consulted a lawyer, explored my options, but in the end I couldn't face it. The legal battle, the depositions, the reliving of Biscuit's death over and over in a courtroom. I didn't have the energy, I didn't have the heart, I just wanted to heal, to grieve. To figure out who I was without Biscuit and without the job that had consumed my identity. I took 3 months off. I lived off savings, off the small severance they'd offered in exchange for signing an NDA I refused to sign. I walked in the park every day, sat on our bench, talked to Biscuit like he could hear me. I started volunteering at the shelter where I'd found him, not because I wanted another dog, but because I needed to be around animals, around beings who loved without condition, without expectation, without performance. I got a new job 6 months later. Smaller company, remote first, with a CEO who'd lost her own dog to cancer and who, when I told her about Biscuit during the interview, said simply, "I'm so sorry. Take whatever time you need, family comes first." I cried in that interview, ugly, gasping tears that I couldn't control. She handed me a tissue and waited. She didn't rush me, she didn't judge me. And when I was done, she said, "When can you start?" I've been there a year now. It's not perfect, no job is, but it's human. They mean it when they say family comes first. I've seen it in action, coworkers taking bereavement leave for pets, for parents, for chosen family. The CEO checking in on people personally when she knows they're going through hard things. The understanding that we're not robots, that we have lives outside of work, that those lives matter more than any deadline or deliverable. I got a new dog 3 months ago. Not to replace Biscuit, no one could replace Biscuit, but because my apartment was too quiet, too empty, too full of memories that hurt to hold. His name is Waffle. He's a scruffy terrier mix with 2 working eyes and a habit of stealing socks. He's not Biscuit, he'll never be Biscuit, but he's his own person with his own personality, his own way of making me laugh when I want to cry. And I'm learning to love him without comparing him to what I lost. I still think about Karen sometimes, about Meridian, about the termination letter I never read, the coworkers who wouldn't meet my eyes, the team player culture that chewed me up and spat me out when I needed it most. I don't hate her, I don't hate them. Hate takes too much energy, and I'm using my energy on other things now, on Waffle, on my new job, on rebuilding a life that actually feels like mine. But I do hope she remembers. I hope she remembers what she did, what she said, how she looked at me when she told me I wasn't a team player because I wouldn't abandon my dying dog. I hope one day she's on the other side of that conversation, needing compassion, needing flexibility, needing someone to see her as human instead of human capital. And I hope in that moment she understands what she took from me, what she took from all of us who believed the lie that loyalty flows upward, that sacrifice is noble, that companies are families. They're not families, they're businesses. And the sooner we stop pretending otherwise, the sooner we can demand the protections and boundaries and basic human decency that every worker deserves. So tell me, Internet, am I the asshole for missing the meeting? For prioritizing my dog over my job? For refusing to sign the NDA? For telling Karen I hoped she'd remember what she did? For not suing, for not fighting harder, for walking away instead of burning it all down? I've read the comments, I've heard the arguments. I've sat with this for over a year and I still don't have a definitive answer. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe some stories don't have clear heroes and villains, just systems that grind people up, and people who try to survive inside them, and the occasional moment when someone chooses compassion over policy and changes everything. But I know this, I was a good employee. I was a good person. I loved my dog with my whole heart and I was there when he died, and I don't regret a single moment I spent with him instead of in that conference room. Not one. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd make the same choice every single time. I told my twin sister I was pregnant first. She told everyone at the party it was her news. I never thought I'd be the woman standing in my own kitchen, holding a positive pregnancy test, watching my identical twin sister tell my entire family that she was the one having a baby. But apparently that's exactly what happened. And before you ask, no, this isn't some innocent mix-up, some oops we got confused because we look alike situation. This was deliberate, calculated. And it took me 32 years of sisterhood to finally see who she really was. Let me take you all the way back. I need you to understand who we were before this happened because I think it matters. I think it matters a lot. My name is Sophie, my twin sister is Olivia. And for most of our lives, we were the twins, one word, one identity, one unit that people referenced instead of 2 separate human beings. We were born 2 minutes apart, me first, her second, and those 2 minutes defined everything. I was the older sister, the responsible one, the one who walked first and talked first and read first. Olivia was the baby, the surprise, the one who got away with everything because she was just a little behind her sister. Our mom loved dressing us alike, matching outfits, matching bows, matching everything. She'd parade us around the grocery store, the church, the family gatherings, and people would coo and stare and ask the same questions every single time. Are you identical? Can you read each other's minds? Do you feel each other's pain? We'd smile and nod and give the practiced answers because that's what good twins do. That's what our mom expected. But underneath the matching outfits, we were different. I felt it even as a kid. I liked books, thick ones, the kind with maps in the front and glossaries in the back. I'd disappear into our shared bedroom for hours, building worlds in my head while Olivia played dress-up in the living room, performing for anyone who'd watch. I was quiet, observant, content with my own company. Olivia was loud, magnetic, desperate for attention. She'd throw tantrums in stores, charm strangers with her dimples, wrap our dad around her finger with a single pout. And she hated that I was older. Those 2 minutes ate at her like acid. She'd correct people constantly. Actually, we're the same age. And she'd find ways to undermine me, subtle ways that adults missed but I felt like physical blows. If I got an A on a test, she'd announce that grades didn't matter and that she was more creative. If I made a friend, she'd befriend them too, closer, faster, until I was the third wheel in my own relationships. If I got praise for anything, piano recitals, science fairs, perfect attendance, she'd find a way to make it about her. She'd cry, she'd get sick, she'd create a crisis that required everyone's attention, and suddenly my achievement was forgotten, replaced by Olivia's latest drama. I told myself it was normal sibling stuff, that all sisters competed, all twins had rivalry, all families had dynamics that were messy and complicated. I told myself to be patient, to be understanding, to remember that Olivia was sensitive, that she struggled with being the second twin, that she just needed more reassurance than I did. So I gave it to her. I spent my entire childhood and adolescence shrinking myself to make room for her. I downplayed my successes. I shared my friends. I let her copy my homework, wear my clothes, take credit for my ideas. I became so good at being the supportive twin, the quiet twin, the other one, that I forgot I was allowed to want things for myself. College was supposed to be different. We went to different schools, me to a small liberal arts college in Vermont, her to a big state school in Florida. I was terrified at first. I'd never been without her, never made friends without her there to charm them first. Never existed in a space where people didn't immediately compare me to my mirror image, but it was freeing. I made friends who liked me for me, not because I was Sophie and Olivia. I discovered that I was funny, genuinely funny, in a dry, observational way that made people laugh without trying. I joined a book club, a hiking group, a volunteer organization that built houses for low-income families. I dated a guy named Ethan for 2 years, my first real relationship. And he loved me without ever meeting my twin, without ever comparing us, without ever asking if I could feel Olivia's pain when she got food poisoning at spring break. Olivia hated that I was happy without her. She called constantly, texted constantly, showed up at my dorm unannounced with stories about how hard her life was, how mean her roommates were, how much she missed me. She'd cry and I'd comfort her, drop everything to talk her through her latest crisis, stay up until 3 a.m. on the phone while my friends went out without me. She'd visit and instantly become the center of attention, flirting with my friends, charming my professors, leaving me on the sidelines of my own life. "You're so lucky to have a twin," people would say. "It must be amazing to be so close." And I'd smile and nod because what else could I do? Tell them that my twin was the reason I had anxiety. That I couldn't make a decision without wondering how Olivia would react. That I'd spent my whole life performing a supporting role in her story, and I didn't know how to be the main character anymore. After college, I moved to Portland. Olivia moved to Portland too, to be close to you, Soph, I just miss you so much, and the pattern resumed. She inserted herself into my friend group, my favorite coffee shop, my apartment building. She dated guys I was interested in, accidentally, and then dumped them when they got too serious. She got a job at the same marketing firm where I worked, different department, but close enough that people constantly confused us, constantly asked if we were the twins, constantly expected us to be a package deal. I tried to set boundaries, I really did. I told her I needed space, that we were adults now, that we could be close without being attached at the hip. She'd cry those big, dramatic tears that had worked on our dad since we were 5, and say I was abandoning her, that I was cruel, that she didn't know who she was without me. And I'd cave every time because the guilt was worse than the suffocation. Because I'd been trained since birth that Olivia's needs were more important than mine, that her feelings were bigger, more urgent, more deserving of attention. Then I met Daniel. Daniel was a software engineer at a startup across town. I met him at a friend's birthday party, a party Olivia wasn't invited to, because for once I'd kept the details to myself, because I was tired of her hijacking every social event I attended. He was tall, with messy brown hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose, and he talked about coding the way I talked about books, with passion, with depth, with a joy that was infectious. We clicked immediately. Not in the dramatic, fireworks way that Olivia always described her relationships, but in a quiet, steady way that felt like coming home. He remembered the little things, my coffee order, the name of my childhood cat, the way I liked my eggs. He listened when I talked, actually listened, without interrupting to make it about himself. He made me feel seen, not as one of the twins, but as Sophie, just Sophie. We dated for a year. Olivia met him eventually, I couldn't avoid it forever, and she did her usual thing. She flirted, she charmed, she found ways to insert herself into our conversations, our plans, our inside jokes. But Daniel didn't bite. He was polite to her, friendly even, but he always came back to me, always chose me, and for the first time in my life I felt like I was enough on my own. Daniel proposed on our second anniversary. A quiet proposal, no flash mob, no public spectacle, just the two of us on a hike in the Columbia River Gorge at a viewpoint we'd discovered together. He got down on one knee, his hands shaking, and he said, "Sophie, I don't want to be part of a package deal. I want you, just you, forever." I cried. I said yes. And for a moment I let myself believe that things were finally changing, that I was finally free, that Olivia's shadow was finally lifting. I was wrong. Olivia's reaction to the engagement was complicated. On the surface, she was thrilled, squealing, hugging me, demanding to be maid of honor. But underneath, I could feel it, the tension, the resentment. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes when she looked at Daniel, at me, at the ring on my finger. "You're just so lucky," she said, over and over, in a tone that didn't sound like she thought I was lucky at all. "Finding someone so perfect, I don't know how you do it." "You'll find someone," I'd say, because that's what you say, even when you know it's not what she wants to hear. "I'm not worried," she'd respond, her voice tight. "I just think it's interesting that you get everything first. College, the good apartment, the perfect guy, must be nice being the older twin." There it was, those 2 minutes. The resentment that had been simmering since birth, bubbling to the surface now that I was getting something she couldn't take, couldn't share, couldn't make about herself. The wedding planning was a nightmare. Olivia wanted everything her way, the dress, the venue, the flowers, the music. She'd send me links to dresses she liked, venues she preferred, color schemes that spoke to her. When I chose something different, she'd pout, then cry, then announce that she was just trying to help and that I was being so sensitive. I let her have some things. The bridesmaid dresses, she picked them, I approved them. The bachelorette party, she planned it, I showed up. The shower, she insisted on hosting, and I was so exhausted from the constant negotiations that I said yes just to have one less battle. But the wedding itself was mine. I held the line on the venue, a small vineyard outside Portland, intimate and beautiful. On the dress, simple, elegant, nothing like the ball gown Olivia had wanted me to wear. On the guest list, small, just people we loved, no random plus ones that Olivia tried to add. Daniel supported me through all of it, held my hand during the fights, reminded me that it was okay to want things for myself. We got married last spring. It was perfect, small, meaningful, exactly what I wanted. Olivia was maid of honor, and she gave a speech that was mostly about her. "Sophie and I have been through so much together, people always confuse us. She's the responsible one and I'm the fun one," but I didn't care. I was married, I was happy. I was finally living my own life. Daniel and I started trying for a baby about 6 months after the wedding. We didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not my friends, definitely not Olivia. I wanted this to be mine, just mine. Something I didn't have to share, didn't have to defend, didn't have to shrink to accommodate someone else's feelings about. It took 4 months. 4 months of tracking cycles, of disappointment, of quiet hope that I barely let myself feel. And then one Tuesday morning the test was positive. 2 lines, clear, undeniable, life-changing. I sat on the bathroom floor, test in hand, and I cried. Happy tears, scared tears, overwhelmed tears. I was going to be a mom, me, Sophie, not Sophie and Olivia, just me. Daniel was at work. I called him, my voice shaking, and he answered on the first ring. "I'm pregnant," I whispered, and there was silence on the other end, then a sound like he'd dropped the phone, then his voice, broken and joyful, saying, "Oh my God, Sophie, oh my God, we're having a baby." We decided to wait to tell people. 12 weeks, the safe zone. I wanted to protect this secret, this joy, this tiny thing that was just ours for a little while longer. We made plans, nursery colors, name ideas, how we'd announce it to our families. We were giddy, ridiculous, floating on a cloud of possibility. But I couldn't keep it from Olivia. She was my twin, after all. And despite everything, despite the years of competition and resentment and her constant need to be the center, I still loved her. Still wanted her to be part of this. Still hoped, foolishly, that she'd be happy for me in a way that was genuine, that didn't require her to make it about herself. I invited her over for coffee the following Saturday. Just us, no Daniel, no distractions. I made her favorite muffins, blueberry, the ones our mom used to make, and I waited until she was settled, until she was laughing about something from work, until the moment felt right. "Liv," I said, my heart hammering, "I have news." She looked at me, her head tilting in that way we both did, the twin mannerism that always made people comment on how alike we were. "What kind of news?" "I'm pregnant," I said, and the words felt enormous, terrifying, wonderful. 12 weeks, Daniel and I are having a baby. Olivia's face went through approximately 12 emotions in 3 seconds. Shock. Something darker, jealousy, resentment, then a smile, bright and wide and performative. "Sophie, oh my God, I'm going to be an aunt." She hugged me, tight, too tight, her nails digging into my back. When she pulled away, her eyes were wet, but I couldn't tell if they were happy tears or something else. "I'm so happy for you," she said, and her voice was warm, convincing, the same voice she used when she wanted something. "This is amazing. When are you telling everyone?" "We're waiting until after the first trimester," I said, "just to be safe. You're the first person I've told, well, besides Daniel." "The first person," she repeated, and something flickered in her eyes. "I'm honored. I wanted you to know first," I said, and I meant it. "You're my sister, my twin. This is big, and I wanted to share it with you before everyone else." She smiled again, that bright, wide smile. "Thank you, Soph. That means a lot, really." We talked for another hour. About pregnancy symptoms, about nursery ideas, about whether she thought it was a boy or a girl. She was engaged, animated, asking questions, making plans. It felt good. It felt like the sisterhood I'd always wanted, the connection I'd always hoped we could have beneath the competition and the resentment. When she left, she hugged me again. "I'm so happy for you," she whispered. "This is your moment. I'm going to make sure everyone knows how special this is." I didn't understand what she meant, not then. I thought she meant she'd help with the announcement, plan something special, be the supportive sister I'd always wanted. I smiled, thanked her, watched her drive away with a warmth in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. 2 weeks later, my parents threw their annual summer party. A big backyard barbecue, all the relatives, neighbors, family, friends, the kind of event where my mom spent 3 days cooking and my dad spent the whole time grilling and telling the same stories he'd told for decades. Daniel and I were going to announce the pregnancy there. 12 weeks, safe zone, the perfect moment to share our news with everyone we loved. We arrived early, as we always did, to help set up. My mom was in the kitchen, my dad was in the backyard, and Olivia was already there, wearing a white sundress that looked suspiciously like something I'd almost bought for myself. She hugged me, hugged Daniel, and immediately launched into a story about a work drama that had everyone laughing. The party filled up. Cousins, aunts, uncles, neighbors, the usual crowd, plus some new faces. My mom's famous potato salad made its appearance. My dad's grill got fired up. The backyard buzzed with conversation, laughter, the clinking of drinks. Around 7 p.m., my dad tapped his glass with a fork, the signal that he was about to make a speech. He did this at every party, some toast, some announcement, some reason to gather everyone's attention. I squeezed Daniel's hand, ready. This was it, our moment. "Before we eat," my dad said, his voice booming across the backyard, "I want to make a special announcement. Olivia has some news she'd like to share." I froze. I looked at Olivia, who was standing next to my dad, smiling that bright, wide smile. She caught my eye, held it for a fraction of a second, and then looked away. "Thanks, Dad," she said, her voice carrying across the yard. I wasn't going to say anything yet, but since everyone's here, "I'm pregnant." The backyard erupted. Cheers, applause, my mom rushing forward to hug her, my aunt squealing, my cousins crowding around to congratulate her. Olivia basked in it, the attention, the excitement, the spotlight that was always where she wanted to be. I stood there, Daniel's hand in mine, and I felt the world tilt. I felt my stomach drop, my vision blur, my legs go weak. I looked at Daniel, who was staring at Olivia with an expression of pure confusion, and then back at my sister, who was laughing and accepting hugs and touching her stomach like there was actually something there. She'd stolen my news. She'd taken the moment I'd been planning for weeks, the announcement I'd been so careful and excited about, and she'd claimed it as her own. In front of everyone, without warning, without explanation. And then she looked at me. Directly at me, and she smiled, not the performative smile she'd been giving everyone else. A smaller smile, a private smile, a smile that said, "I win." I don't remember much of what happened next. I remember Daniel pulling me away from the crowd, into the house, into the bathroom. I remember sitting on the edge of the tub, shaking, while he knelt in front of me and said, "Sophie, Sophie, look at me, breathe, what just happened?" I remember wanting to scream, to cry, to run back outside and tell everyone that she was lying, that I was the one who was pregnant, that she'd stolen this from me like she'd stolen everything else my whole life. But I couldn't, because what would I say? Actually, I'm pregnant too, and Olivia stole my announcement. That would make me look petty, competitive, like the jealous twin who couldn't let her sister have a moment. And Olivia knew that. She'd counted on that. She'd engineered this so perfectly that any response from me would make me look bad, would reinforce the narrative that I was the difficult one, the sensitive one, the twin who couldn't just be happy for her sister. I stayed in the bathroom for 20 minutes. Daniel brought me water, held my hand, asked what I wanted to do. "I want to leave," I whispered. "I can't be here, I can't watch her." "We can leave," he said, "right now." "I'll make an excuse." "No," I said, because some stubborn part of me refused to let her win completely. "No, I'm going back out there, I'm going to act like everything is fine. And then tomorrow I'm going to figure out what the hell just happened." I went back outside. I smiled. I hugged Olivia, my twin, my thief, my enemy, in a white sundress, and I said, "Congratulations, Liv. I'm so happy for you." And she hugged me back tight and whispered in my ear, "I told you I'd make sure everyone knew how special this was." I pulled back, looked at her. She was still smiling, but her eyes were cold, triumphant. She'd done this on purpose. She'd planned it. She'd taken my news, my joy, my moment, and she'd claimed it as her own, not because she was actually pregnant. She couldn't be. There was no way she'd have told me, but because she couldn't stand for me to have something she didn't. The rest of the party was a blur. I ate potato salad I couldn't taste. I made small talk I don't remember. I watched Olivia hold court in the center of the backyard, accepting congratulations, showing off her baby bump, which was just her sucking in her stomach and pushing it out strategically, and basking in the attention that should have been mine. And no one questioned it. No one asked why she hadn't mentioned it before, why there was no doctor's confirmation, why she was drinking wine between her announcement and her excitement. They just accepted it because Olivia was convincing, because she was charming, because she'd spent her whole life performing and people believed her performances. Daniel and I left as soon as we could. In the car, he held my hand and said, "We need to talk about this. We need to figure out what to do." "There's nothing to do," I said, my voice hollow. "She announced it, it's done. If I say anything now, I look like I'm competing with her, like I can't let her have her moment." "But it's your moment," Daniel said, his voice sharp with anger. "She stole your moment. She lied to our entire family. There has to be a consequence for that." "She's my twin," I said, and the words tasted like poison. "And she's always done this, always. I let myself believe she'd changed. That she could be happy for me without making it about her. I was wrong." We got home. I went to bed. I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling the baby, our baby, the one Olivia didn't know about, the one I was still protecting, and I cried. Quiet, controlled crying, the kind I'd learned as a child, the kind that didn't disturb anyone, that didn't make a scene, that kept me small and manageable and easy to ignore. The next morning, I called my mom. I told her I needed to talk, that it was important, that she needed to come over without Olivia. She came, concerned, asking if everything was okay with the baby, and I realized, with a sick feeling, that she thought I was talking about Olivia's baby. That in her mind, Olivia was the pregnant one now, the one having the grandchild, the one whose news mattered. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking, "I'm pregnant too, 12 weeks. I told Olivia 2 weeks ago." She was the first person I told, and yesterday she announced it at the party like it was her news. "But she's not pregnant, Mom, she can't be, she stole my announcement, she stole it from me." My mom stared at me. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then, "Sophie, that doesn't make sense. Why would Olivia do that?" "Because she always does this," I said, and my voice was rising, breaking, all the control I'd maintained for 32 years cracking open. "She takes everything from me, my friends, my achievements, my moments. She can't stand for me to have something she doesn't, so she took this. She took the one thing that was just mine and she made it hers." "Sophie," my mom said, and her voice was gentle, careful, the voice she used when she thought I was overreacting. "Olivia has been struggling. She's been feeling left behind, watching you get married, settle down, build a life. Maybe she just got excited. Maybe she got confused. Twins share everything after all. Maybe she thought she was helping." "Helping," I repeated, the word tasting like ash. "She told everyone she was pregnant. She showed off a fake baby bump. She accepted congratulations for my baby. That's not helping, Mom, that's theft. That's cruelty, and you're making excuses for her. Again, just like you always have." My mom was quiet. "Then I'll talk to her. I'll find out what's going on. But Sophie, you need to understand, this is a big accusation. If Olivia is actually pregnant, if you're wrong about this." "I'm not wrong," I said, and my voice was flat, final. I know my sister, I know what she's capable of, and I know that she looked me in the eye and smiled while she stole the most important moment of my life. My mom left. She said she'd talk to Olivia, that she'd get to the bottom of this, that everything would be okay. I didn't believe her. I'd seen this pattern too many times. Olivia does something hurtful, mom makes excuses, I swallow my feelings, and we all pretend everything is fine. But this time was different. This time I wasn't going to swallow it. I texted Olivia that afternoon. We need to talk now, my place. She came over an hour later, still wearing the white sundress from the party, still glowing with the attention she'd stolen. She hugged me at the door. Sophie, I'm so glad you called. I wanted to talk to you too. Isn't this exciting? We're going to be moms together. And I let her hug me, let her perform her sisterly affection, let her settle on my couch with a glass of water before I spoke. You're not pregnant, I said, no preamble, no small talk, just the truth laid bare between us. Olivia's smile faltered, just for a second, then it was back, brighter than ever. What, Sophie, of course I am, I announced it yesterday. Why would you say that? Because I know you, I said. Because you've never been able to let me have anything. Because you looked me in the eye 2 weeks ago when I told you I was pregnant and you smiled and you said you were happy for me. And then you stole my announcement. You made it yours. You stood in front of our entire family and lied, Liv. You lied about being pregnant because you couldn't stand for me to have something you didn't. Olivia set down her water. Her smile was gone now, replaced by something harder, colder, more honest than I'd seen from her in years. You think you're so special, she said, her voice quiet but sharp. You think everything is about you. That I can't have my own life, my own news, without it being connected to you somehow. You didn't have your own news, I said. You had my news, my pregnancy, my moment. And you took it because you were going to make it boring. Olivia snapped, and suddenly the mask was off, the performance dropped, and I was seeing the real her, the her I'd always known was there but had never been allowed to acknowledge. You were going to wait until the party, make some quiet little announcement, get a few hugs and move on. I made it exciting, I made it memorable, I gave our family something to celebrate. You gave them a lie, I said. I gave them what they wanted, Olivia shot back. A reason to be happy, a reason to gather around, and yes, I used your news to do it. So what? We're twins, Sophie, what's yours is mine. That's how it's always been. Not anymore, I said, and my voice was steady, stronger than I felt. I'm done, Liv, I'm done letting you take things from me. I'm done shrinking myself so you can shine. I'm done being the other twin, the responsible one, the one who just takes it because that's how Olivia is. Olivia laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Oh, here we go, the martyrdom act. Poor Sophie, always sacrificing, always suffering. You know what? Maybe I did take your announcement. But you know why? Because you don't deserve it. You don't deserve the perfect husband, the perfect life, the perfect baby. You've always been the boring one, the safe one, the one who never takes risks. And now you want to be the mom, the center of attention. You don't know how to handle it, you just waste it. I stared at her, really stared at her. This woman who looked exactly like me, who shared my DNA, my childhood, my face, and who hated me so completely, so thoroughly, that she'd rather destroy my happiness than see me have something she didn't. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my house, get out of my life, I'm done. Olivia stood up. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't read, anger, hurt, something that might have been regret, or might have just been the realization that she'd pushed too far and lost her audience. You're making a mistake, she said. I'm your twin, your sister, you can't just cut me out. Watch me, I said. She left. She walked out of my house, out of my life, and I stood in my living room, shaking, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 32 years. Free, I told my parents the truth that night. All of it, the pregnancy, the announcement, Olivia's lie. I showed them the positive test, the ultrasound photo from my 8-week appointment, the text messages where Olivia had congratulated me on my news 2 weeks prior. They were shocked, then confused, then slowly, painfully, they understood. My dad called Olivia. I don't know what was said, but I know she didn't admit to lying. She told them I was jealous, that I couldn't handle her having something of her own, that I'd always been competitive, and this was just another example. She played the victim, the wounded twin, the sister who'd tried to share good news and been attacked for it. My parents were torn. They wanted to believe both of us, to find a middle ground, to maintain the fiction that their daughters were close, that the twin bond was unbreakable, that family was everything. I let them have their confusion. I didn't need them to choose sides, I just needed them to know the truth. Olivia's pregnancy ended a few weeks later. She told our parents she'd miscarried, early, tragic, too painful to talk about. She got sympathy, attention, the concerned phone calls and casseroles that she'd always craved. No one questioned it. No one asked for proof. She was the grieving mother-to-be, and I was the jealous sister who'd made her miscarriage about myself. I didn't correct the narrative, I couldn't. I was 8 months pregnant by then, huge and uncomfortable and focused on my own baby, my own life, my own future. I let Olivia have her story. I let her be the victim. I let her fade into the background of my life where she'd always belonged. My daughter was born in February. A girl, perfect and tiny and furious, with a head of dark hair and a cry that could wake the dead. We named her Clara after my grandmother. She is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Olivia didn't meet her for 3 months. I didn't invite her to the hospital, didn't send her photos, didn't include her in the announcement. My parents were upset. She's your twin, Sophie. She's Clara's aunt. You can't just cut her out. But I held the line. I was done performing sisterhood for people who didn't understand what it had cost me. When Olivia finally met Clara, it was at my parents' house, a supervised visit where I watched her like a hawk. She held my daughter, cooed over her, acted the part of the devoted aunt. But I saw the way she looked at Clara, not with love but with something else. Something that looked a lot like the way she'd looked at me my whole life. Like I was something she wanted, something she couldn't have, something she resented me for possessing. I didn't let her hold Clara for long. I took my daughter back, held her close, and I knew, with a certainty that settled in my bones, that Olivia would never be part of our lives in the way she'd always demanded. That the twin bond, the shared identity, the what's yours is mine philosophy, it was over. Broken, irreparable. I posted this whole story on Reddit about 6 months after Clara was born. I needed perspective. I needed to know if I was the villain for cutting off my twin, for keeping my daughter from her aunt, for choosing myself over the family narrative that had defined my entire existence. The comments were overwhelming. Thousands of them, most expressing shock and outrage on my behalf. People called Olivia a narcissist, a sociopath, the worst kind of sibling. They shared their own stories of toxic family members, of stolen moments, of the painful realization that blood doesn't guarantee love. Some people said I should have fought harder, announced my pregnancy at the party anyway, exposed Olivia's lie in front of everyone. Others said I handled it perfectly, that dignity was better than drama, that my silence was more powerful than any confrontation. The comment that stuck with me was from someone who said, "She didn't just steal your announcement, she stole your identity. She spent 32 years convincing you that you were half of a whole, that your achievements were shared, your moments were joint, your life was a package deal. And when you finally tried to claim something as just yours, she couldn't allow it. Because if you're whole on your own, she has to face the fact that she might not be." That comment gave me language for what I'd experienced. It wasn't just about the pregnancy announcement. It was about 32 years of being defined by my relationship to someone else, of being one of the twins instead of just me. Olivia's theft was the culmination of a lifetime of erasure, and my response, cutting her out, claiming my own identity, raising my daughter as just Clara's mom, not the twin who had a baby, was the first time I'd truly been whole. Olivia and I don't speak anymore. It's been 2 years. She sends cards on Clara's birthday, calls my parents to complain about me, tells anyone who will listen that I'm cruel and unforgiving and that she made a mistake that I've blown out of proportion. I don't engage. I don't defend myself. I just live my life, my whole, complete, individual life, and I let her tell whatever story she needs to tell. My parents have accepted it mostly. They see Clara, they visit, they don't push for reconciliation. They know, I think, that some breaks can't be mended, some betrayals can't be forgiven, and some twins are better off as strangers. I still think about Olivia sometimes. Not with longing, not with hate, but with a kind of distant sadness. For the sister I wanted, the bond I dreamed of, the person I hoped she could be. I mourn that loss, the loss of a relationship that never really existed, that was always performance and competition and her need to be first. But I don't mourn her, not the real her. The real Olivia is someone I finally see clearly, and what I see is not someone I want in my life or my daughter's life. What I see is someone who would rather destroy my happiness than see me have something she doesn't. And that's not family, that's not love, that's not anything I want to be part of. So tell me, internet, am I the asshole? For cutting off my twin, for keeping my daughter from her aunt, for choosing myself over the family narrative, for refusing to forgive, to forget, to pretend that what she did was just a mistake. I've read the comments. I've heard the arguments. I've sat with this for 2 years and I still don't have a definitive answer. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe some stories don't have clear heroes and villains, just people who hurt each other because they were scared or selfish or human. But I know this, I am not half of a whole. I am not one of the twins. I am Sophie, mother, wife, woman, individual. I am whole, I am enough. And no one gets to take that from me ever again.